Okay, we're going to start tonight with public communications. It looks like we have three. Do them in the order that I was given them. So we'll start with Kelly Brown. Brown? Oh, okay.
I have comments on two issues that are before the board this evening. My name is Kelly Brown. My husband and I are homeowners here in Mokena, and our two children attend Mokena Elementary School. Professionally, I'm the director of a nonprofit organization in Chicago where I am charged with managing and overseeing significant federal, state, and local grants exceeding 7 figures. As a former practicing attorney, not only am I familiar with the law, but also the nature of contractual obligations, financial statements, and P&L. I'm here tonight to provide comment on two issues: the CLEAR software and the administrator compensation packages. With respect to the CLEAR package, at February's Board of Education meeting, Mr. Stein presented to the board regarding CLEAR and urged the board to enter into a contract with them to conduct near instantaneous batch residency requests for the district. This work is currently done by individuals employed by the school district when new students enroll. Based on the information presented, the CLEAR contract costing in year one $13,764 for one user and over $15,000 for two users would be a 5-year period with 5% annual cost increases year over year. At the end of 5 years, we'll be paying $16,730 for one user and over $18,000 for two. Mr. Stein's presentation at the February board meeting indicated that CLEAR approached the district in an effort to obtain a contract to provide residency checks and guesstimated that there were potentially non-residents attending school within the district. On March 11th, I sent a FOIA request to the district requesting the total number of students enrolled in District 159 for the current academic year and the 2 previous years that were later determined to not be residents of the district. The response to my FOIA request was that, quote, the district does not maintain any records. There's not been a demonstrated need that the current documentation collection methods utilized by the district are not sufficiently meeting the needs of this district. The current enrollment process requires all of us parents to produce documents required by the state of Illinois and the district to provide residency, including but not limited to state-issued ID cards, driver's licenses, utility bills, leases, mortgages, and other homeownership records. I've reviewed the written report provided to the board in advance of today's meeting, which states, as you can see, if we found at least one student who was not a resident attending District 159, it would in effect pay for 1 year of the residency software. Everything hinges on an if. If we find a non-resident attending school, then hey, we've covered our costs. But based on the FOIA response and our statements supporting this, the reality of the situation is clear. The district has not found students that are not matriculating here that are not residents in the district.
15 seconds.
Mokena is a wonderful place to live. We love it here. Our schools are excellent. We've been very, very happy. However, we are not Winnetka. We're not Glenbrook or Hinsdale or Niles Township or even Orland Park, where there's a known problem with people attempting to be educated in the district without meeting those requirements.
Time's up.
Indeed, our per capita student expenditures in Mokena is below the state average for elementary school students and is one of the lowest in our surrounding areas.
Kelly,
CLEAR
3.
is a background check company utilized by the TSA as an anti-terrorist measure when reviewing requests to bypass federally operated safety security measures at airports.
Kelly, time is up. You got 3 minutes.
Oh, all right. Well, I strongly urge you to vote no with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you.
sorry to cut you off. 3 minutes.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Next up is Amanda Montgomery.
Hi, I'm Amanda Montgomery. I just wanted to come and say, I hope this gets to Miss Dora. Miss Dora Ruiz. She is probably the most amazing sub that I have ever met. She took over the special education class that is kindergarten and first grade, and she has such great relationships with the kiddos in that classroom. She is making games not only with my daughter, but with other kids as well. My kids started reading a book from front to back, which hasn't happened until recently. So I just want to hope that it gets out there that she is amazing. And I don't know if her plans are to become a teacher, but she would be amazing at that. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Okay. Next up is Heather Escar.
Glasses off. My name is Heather Esger, and I've been a third grade teacher here at MES for 25 years. I realize that election cycles can get heated. However, I have been upset with the amount of misinformation I have read on social media and in campaign literature. Being an educator in today's environment, it is difficult. So I cannot stand by when I read information that is blatantly false. I have heard comments that indicate that not a lot has been done in the district in the last 5 years. And I find those comments to be insulting to all the work that we have done here. Here are just some of the false statements that I have to correct tonight. Number one, other expenses are prioritized over safety, and there is a need for a safety committee. False. Teachers, support staff, and administrators on the safety and security team develop and review safety protocols with safety experts in their fields, which include our police and our fire department leaders. Updates to safety are continually made to protect our safety and our students. Number two, there are staff shortages, or we are struggling to afford hiring teachers. False. Our teachers volunteer and sit in on interview committees to help choose the quality teachers we have, because Mokena 159 has the reputation that we do. We have not seen core teaching positions that go unfilled. In fact, there are usually numerous candidates to choose from. Based on our students' needs, these last couple of years, we have had additional hired staff that includes special education teachers, a BCBA, and social workers, just to name a few. These specialists are great to help in the core teachers. If a teacher has a problem about class size or the composition of their class, then they can be in the problem-solving process to address the concern. So far, no teacher has initialized this process since it is put into place. Number three, work needs to be done to develop intervention, specialized instruction, and advanced learning. Another false. Multi-tiered systems of support have been implemented by teachers and specialists for years now. Just this year, teachers were part of an advanced learning task force. They spent a lot of time planning for this process to begin next year. And many of these teachers are planning to enroll in the graduate level classes in advanced learning and gifted education, and that they will begin this summer. Number four, we are not doing what is needed to get our students ready for the academic rigor of Lincoln Way High School. False. Have you seen our scores? Well, our students are achieving some of the highest scores that they have in the district history. Our junior high currently has exemplary status from the state. So before I retire and end my 34 years as an educator this year, I would like to thank the current Mokena 159 board for their funding and supporting of these initiatives and always listening to the teachers who speak for their students and their best interests.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We have 5 presentations tonight. We're going to start with the kindergarten presentation on tree research projects.
I will get us started. So this evening for our student spotlight, we have 7 outstanding kindergarten students that are here tonight to share with us their Module 3 performance task from our ELA program, EL Education. In Module 3 that the students just recently completed, they explored the big idea that all living things in the natural world have needs in order to survive and grow. They did a close study of trees and living things that depend on them. In Unit 1, the students learned what makes something living or non-living. They read texts such as what's alive, and they also conducted investigations in which they closely viewed living things such as plants. In Unit 2, they learned about the needs of animals as living things and how trees help meet those needs. They did a close study of a text called Be a Friend to Trees. They looked at whole group and small group research to see how trees provide food for animals. They also took a field trip to Pilcher Park during this time to learn how maple syrup is made from trees. In Unit 3, students built on their understanding of the needs of living things and further developed their research skills by researching a specific tree in small groups together. During their small group research, they learned about a tree, its needs, and how it supports other living things for food. This learning culminated in a series of science talks in which the class engaged in a discussion about their research findings. They then used their learning to create an informational tree collage, which includes a collage, informational writing, and an animal puppet. They also revised their writing and collage and practiced presenting their work. Wow, kindergartners. So what? So this evening, we have a student from each classroom that's going to share their informational collage with you. We also will have them up on the screen because the student has to read from their paper, and I wanted to make sure everyone could see their collage. I'm going to move this out of the way because we're a little too short to use the podium. Okay. So up first, we have Rory from Mrs. O. Krasinski's class, and she is going to tell us about the paper birch tree.
This is a paper birch tree. It needs some water and some sun. A hummingbird needs it to survive.
Now we can pass it along to the table so that they can get it too. Okay. Next up, we have Layla from Mrs. Wardell's class. She will be telling us about the sugar maple.
The sugar maple. It needs some sun. An animal that needs it to survival is a deer.
It's so good. Thank you.
Next up, we have Maverick from Mrs. Caden's class. She's going to be telling us about the weeping willow.
This is the weeping willow. It needs lots of water and some sun. A beaver needs it to survive. Thank you.
You can pass it along. Nice job. Okay. Next up, we have Chloe from Mrs. Blank's class. She will be telling us about the live oak.
This is the live oak. It needs lots of water and some sun to survive. An animal that needs it to survival is squirrels.
Next up, we have Cruz. He will be telling us about the paper birch.
This is the paper birch tree. It needs some sun and some water. A deer needs it to survive.
Okay, now we have Matt from Miss Kelly's class. He is going to be telling us about the live oak.
Ready? You can hold it this way. Really loud, okay?
This is the live oak. It needs lots of water and some sun. A squirrel needs it to survive. Now show it around. Yay. Good job, Maggie.
And lastly, we have Josie from Mrs. Morrow's class. She will be telling us about the Coast Red.
This is the coast redwood tree. It needs sun and water. A deer needs it to survive.
So as you can see, kindergartners 5 and 6 years old put a lot of work into reading and writing and researching all about trees. They ended working together in research groups to really get an understanding of a particular tree. And we are so proud of their work, their writing, their creativity, and all the learning that they have. And especially thank you to our teachers who got our students to be able to do all of this at 5 and 6 years old. So let's give everyone a big round of applause. All right. We do have a special little nice job present for you. So if you want to go ahead and come out here with your teacher, Mr. Bush, our board president, will give that to you. We'll take some pictures up here as well.
Pictures first. Or?
I'm going to get one more too, just so we have it.
Look in the back. In the back. Back.
Big smile over here.
Okay, how about Mrs. Chorley over there? You got it? You got some? You got some? Okay. All right. Parents might be using the coffee mug more than the students. We do time, maybe.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. You did wonderful. I can ask him. He might have already turned it off.
Ready, hun?
And
Yeah. That's okay. We'll just put on. Okay. Never mind.
Okay, we're going to move on with presentations. We got a slight change of plan. Been informed our special education consultants are going to go next. They want to try to get the drive home tonight, so we'll let them go first so that they can hit the road on that front. So our special ed consultants, Dr. Johnson's going to
Yep.
introduce them.
Yeah, so I will be introducing our consultants tonight. Unfortunately, Megan Munn is unable to be with us tonight as she is currently at a visitation due to a recent loss in her family. So she's really struggling with not being here tonight. But let's please make sure to send our thoughts and support to her and her family during this difficult time. So I'm pleased tonight to, on Megan's behalf, introduce Pandora Taylor and Tammy Henry, our esteemed special education consultants. They will be presenting on the work of the Special Education Steering Committee and provide an overview of the report that they compiled for the Special Education Department. It has been a pleasure working with Pandora and Tammy on the steering committee as we've explored best practices in special education together over the past several weeks, and we'll continue to do that in the near future. But I will now hand it over to them so they can introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Fantastic. You should never follow kindergartners.
Yeah, no, we're not nearly as fun as that or as cute. We're just going to say that. First of all, Mr. President, thank you for allowing us to be here. It's been a pleasure to work with your staff, and we appreciate the invitation to share the work that we've been able to do with you guys.
Just really quick, can you guys stand as close as you can to the microphone just so people can hear?
We certainly can.
Thank
And
you
we
very
can
much.
also use our inside voices.
There we
We
go.
present a lot, so we'll project. We promise that you'll be able to hear us. We're not going to talk a lot about who we are individually. We just have a couple of facts about ourselves up. I'm Tammy Henry. I have a background in special education. I've been a building principal, a district superintendent. I was a consultant. I was the director for Project Choices at the State Board of Education, which was the state board's least restrictive environment initiative. And then I have been a private consultant whenever ISB decided to rearrange things. We decided instead of going back to district work, continue the work that we love privately. So that's how we ended up here with you. Pandora?
I am Pandora Taylor. That's on my birth certificate and my driver's license. I'm an educator, general educator and special educator. I almost said former, but that doesn't happen. I don't think you're a former educator if you're ever an educator. I was also an inclusion facilitator in the building where I attended school as a student from kindergarten through 12th grade. I also worked for the Least Restrictive Environment Initiative for the Illinois State Board of Education, Project Choices, for 20 years and retired from that. In 2016, I said, I'm all done. And at that time, I was also an international trainer for Thinking Collaborative, how we have conversations that people want to listen to and how they want to listen to other people and how we can facilitate that process, because learning how to listen doesn't just start in kindergarten and it doesn't just end when we leave the building. I am now a consultant coach and doing the work I love, which is called the systems work that you all are so graciously involved in at this moment and will continue to do whether we're here or we're not here.
So
Yes.
those are just a little bit of facts about us. Megan has our full bio. If you want to learn more about us, please connect with her and you can call us anytime. But one of the big things is this is work we've been doing a long time. And we have to say that typically when we worked for the state board is we did this work with people that didn't want to do it. Like we went to places that were either on the watch list or they had some real challenges. And very rarely did we get called by a district that says we want to be proactive and we want to do some amazing work in our district. And we've had the pleasure to do the kind of work that we know how to do in a district that really is forward thinking and proactive rather than reactive. So we want to, again, thank you for allowing us to work with your teams.
So for the remainder of our 11 minutes and
Yes.
51 seconds, the information today is going to help you as a board to understand the work that your district team has started to do and the research behind some of that, sort of the what and the why.
You should be able to also understand the progress that's been made to date because your team is still in the middle of that work. It's not done yet, but let you know where we started and where they're currently at with the work.
Also understand where this work is going, what the intention of it is, and what the end result may be.
And finally, like what your role is, because you guys have a critical role in making that work happen too. So it's like the what and the why and the how and where we're going. That's what we hope you walk away with today.
So before we begin, we want to give you a little bit of background about what we have done thus far in your district. And first, we want to say that this is something that you're doing proactively. It's not something that you're required to do. So in your because of who you are, you have decided that you want to move forward in a way to enhance everything that's already happening for your students in a positive way, and to increase the capacity around that.
Yeah, you heard some good things already. We're just saying that we're not here because you're in trouble. We're not here because there's bad things happening that needs to be fixed. We're here to support your team as they are proactively looking at your system, doing an audit, and thinking about next steps that are going to make you better. Okay, so we're here as support to do that.
And we have engaged stakeholders in that supportive process, and we are excited about the possibilities, as are they. So this is what it looked like.
Here's so far what we've done, how we started. We did personal interviews with teachers and parents. So we did 51 in-person interviews. There were 15 general education teachers, 11 special education teachers, support staff, and families. So we conducted 51 interviews with people and stakeholders in your district. And probably the other thing, I know I'm kind of bragging on you, but we have traditionally done that. We've engaged with stakeholders every district that we work with. You guys are one of the few that made an open call to parents. You didn't, like a lot of times districts will say, okay, here's your 10 parents to talk to. Do you guys know what you did? You guys made an open call. You put it out there for parents. Any parent that would like to speak to our consultants and talk with them about the good, the bad, the ugly, your experience, how it was going. You made an open call and let everybody talk to us that wanted to. That is rare. That is rare. So we got a very nice cross section. And you know, a bell curve, you get some people over here and some people over here, and you get people in the middle. But we were able to, talking to all of those stakeholders from those personal interviews, and we had them fill out an inclusive reflection practice tool. So that's one of the tools that we used at the state level when we were talking with districts around inclusive practices, and everybody completed that. So between the interviews and that tool, we got a nice cross section about what's going on in your district, how people are engaging, how they're feeling, because facts and feelings are important whenever you work in that kind of setting. So those were some of the first things that we did in your district. We listened to the people in your district, and we got some perspective on how they saw inclusive practices being played out in your district.
And you had already done a lot of work prior to us doing those two things. We also looked at the report from the Illinois State Board of Education just to see what they were saying. So we crosswalked that with some of the information that we had as well. In addition, we reviewed some of the IEPs.
We read IEPs for days. Like seriously, our eyes were crossed. Your district was very, oh man, they worked hard to send us IEPs that maintain confidentiality. So they would black out all the names and that kind of stuff. So we had no clue who they were. We couldn't have, identified anyone, but we were able to look at your data through IEPs and how they were being written. So we did that.
In addition, you had already done some work with the Autism Project. They had used a tool called the APERS, and also Dr. Patrick Swarsh was here 2 years ago, I believe, and he also did some observations. So we read those documents and we collated that information. So we feel like we've gotten a pretty broad swath across what things might look like and sound like here. And I apologize to Patrick, we've spelled his name wrong.
We did again. We know Patrick, and we've worked with the ladies that run Autism Plus. So those are some colleagues of ours across multiple years. So we were able to look at their information and crosswalk it with ours to integrate those, triangulate your data.
So the reason that we're doing this is the why, because school improvement means people improvement. When people in the system improve and their capacity increases, the system does. And that's what we're talking about with everyone. It's not about doing something in isolation and having a pocket of excellence. Those kindergarten teachers are excellent. We want that across the district. Those intermediate teachers are excellent. We want that across the board. So from the boardroom to the buildings to the classroom is what we're talking about. And that wasn't from us, that was from Rick Dufour.
So we do just want to reiterate again, your team is very proactive. And the other thing, they are being very adaptive. And I don't mean flexible. We mean that they are being able to answer the questions of who are we, why are we doing this, and why are we doing it this way? So they are thinking about not just maintaining status quo or continuing to do the things they've always done, but why are we really doing that? What is the desired outcome? And how are we going to make sure that we hit our outcome? Do we keep things the same? And what might need to change? So that is some of the work that your teams are engaging in, asking those really critical questions.
So what were some of our recommendations? You have this, I believe, or if you don't have it, you will have it. As we go through some of these things, we highlighted what we considered maybe some of the things to bring forward. So the first piece is communication and collaboration. If we can't communicate with one another, if we can't collaborate, we can't get the work done. That's where it happens. In our report, I don't even know if I want to call it that, recommendations, we believe that communication and collaboration between the programs and between the buildings is the place to start. That's one of our recommendations. And then how to make the meetings that you're having more effective. We spend $4.5 billion a year on meetings. I'm making that up. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a lot of money.
See why I like to work with her? Yeah. We just make up the date. I know it. We believe it, right? But like seriously, that number is not far off. Do you know that the good work at schools happen in meetings? And if the meetings are not productive, then we aren't getting the outcomes that we need. And the work says, the research says, some of the work that we do on a regular basis that comes out of Wellman and Garmston, they say that the quality of how adults communicate and how they talk directly impacts student achievement. So if our meetings are more productive, if our meetings are more successful, student achievement goes up. So it's how are we collaborating? How are we talking? And that will make a big difference on student achievement. So not only do we are not advocating for let's just have more meetings. We're talking about have quality meetings. So let's have conversations across buildings. Let's do articulation, vertical and horizontal, and make them powerful.
Least amount of time, most work accomplished, and decisions that stay made. And
People leave satisfied.
in our next 3 minutes, our last 3 minutes, we'd like to talk about I do this to her so that she knows where we are in the process. We can say hello for 2 days.
That's it.
So 15 minutes is a big stretch. The next piece is coaching and implementation.
They're all laughing. They've been in our meetings.
Coaching and implementation supports. Now, this is research-based, and we know that if you provide professional development and you don't have a coaching component, 90% of what you train or what you share is going to be gone basically before you leave the room, but actually within.
Yeah. And we do know that you have a coaching element already built in. What we would recommend is that be revisited and ramped up. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? And is it serving our needs? Right? So coaching is critical. We would say don't spend any money on professional development if you are not going to coach it out.
Because that is a waste of your $4.5 billion.
That is true. That is
Yes.
the right number for that.
Our next area that we highlighted was a district approach to the IEP development. We really believe that consistency in writing those goals and objectives across buildings and programs will improve the overall quality of the IEPs.
One of the things we noticed that when we read your IEPs, and this is no criticism, this is something that we see many places, that across buildings, they're not developed the same, or they're not written the same. So when a kiddo transitions from one building to the next, we didn't have that built in, so some consistency across the district about language, process, structures, those type of things across the IEP process. So it has consistency and continuity across your district. And then communication with that. Go back to number 1, do that across.
Then as we move into the area of co-teaching, we saw some teachers that were using the 6 models that Marilyn Friend identifies in her research, and that's the model that we have trained and are most familiar with, but it wasn't necessarily consistent. And while 2 adults may be in the room, Marilyn says if they aren't co-teaching, co-planning, and co-assessing, they're not really co-teaching. So the robustness that needs to be there would be the implementation of those 3 areas for co-teaching.
And we would just say that what you would want to see if you're going to invest in co-teaching as a model, it would be consistent across all of your program. So there are, right now, you have some islands of excellence. You want that across the entire system.
In our 30 seconds that 10 seconds.
Well,
9
hurry up
seconds,
then.
8 seconds. So knowing that there are other things in our report that may be pertinent for you to read, we need to.
So one of the things,
Stop
like
there.
climate and culture, is one of the other we have 2 more recommendations. One is climate and culture. Everybody get on the same page about what is inclusive practices. And that's a paradigm. That's not a strategy. That's not a place. It's a way of thinking. So build the capacity in your district in every staff member to have the same kind of paradigm as what we say about learning and education across all kids. So we would say that. And then the last one is family engagement versus family participation. We would encourage the district to consider seeing parents as participants in the educational process and not just visitors in the process.
So obviously there's more we can say.
Yeah, a lot.
We appreciate the time that you've given us, and we congratulate you on moving forward with something that is a benefit to all the students in the Mokena district. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a safe trip home. Hopefully
Thank
the
you.
weather holds off.
And thank you for allowing us to go. It's a 5-hour trip home for us, so we're
Yes.
going to get on the road.
Got it. Yes. Okay, our next presentation will stay on script and we'll go with the capital plan. The architects and engineers.
So to present our capital plan from our architect firm, we have Dan Creda, and from our engineering firm, we have Christian Giuliani. They were going to talk about our capital improvement plan. We went through the capital improvement plan at the finance committee last Monday, and it probably a little more greater of detail than you're going to see tonight. They're going to give you some overviews, and then after tonight, this capital improvement plan will be posted to our district website on our transparency page. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do the 5-minute version. That was my time limit I was given tonight. So we'll speed through this a little bit tonight. If you have questions, just let me know and we'll stop. With me is Christian from ESG. They are the district's mechanical electrical team that's working on the projects as well. So sometimes we're working in tandem. Sometimes we're working kind of side by side. So I'll start tonight. Just a quick update on the process. I know the audience, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to have this mass exodus. I thought I was going to be up here alone, but the process that we've taken, it's pretty consistent from year to year, is that we meet either weekly or every other week just to sit down with the administrative team and review where we're at with not just the projects that are in action, but also the projects that are going to be on the 1-year, 2-year, 3-year horizon. So what you'll see tonight is really a living document because we're moving things around based on needs that surface that might bump one thing from a year to the next year. So that process is consistent. If you have anything to add, Christian, just jump in. Keep going. All right. So just a quick snapshot of your 3 buildings, a little bit of vintage and size of those buildings as a reminder. And then we're going to focus on the things that happened this past summer, not so much going back. But you can see there's a great list of things, capital improvement lists that really focus on warm, safe, dry across all the buildings. So the list is getting long. We've been at this for about 5 years now. We're back to 2021 as a checkpoint, but things have happened even before that once we did that facility assessment. So the things that have happened most recently at Mokena Elementary School is a playground and the parking lot. That project, that was a longer term project, finished up in 2024. Window film was introduced at the buildings district from security measure. The main entrance and the door replacement at the front door here was completed this past summer. The vestibule flooring and other flooring areas were completed as well, mostly at vestibules or high traffic areas within the school. And then the district took point on a few things that they did district direct. That was some painting, some electrical work, as well as a walk-in freezer condenser. So that's the highlight of 2024 at MES. And then what we've got on the horizon for this coming summer is more unit ventilator replacements. There's another 11 units that are going to happen, and you'll see that continuing at this building over the year after that. But that's your HVAC system. It's a standalone units within those classroom areas. Fire alarm panel replacements. So you're going to get an addressable system that's going to bring you up to current code in the building. And then additional flooring replacement. We've got some areas targeted that will focus on pretty much the activity area on the north side of the building. And then bi-directional amplifier will be installed over, that's quicker than the summer, isn't it? Is that coming up?
It'll happen in the summer.
Summer, okay. I wasn't sure if there was a spring break. Forthcoming is more classroom and window treatments that will happen across all three buildings. We'll start some roof replacements at MES in 2026. This coming summer, you'll have some at MIS. And then additional unit vent replacements, that's just going to be an ongoing thing until we knock off all the classrooms that have that, because they've all kind of hit their useful lifespan. At MIS, the list is flooring replacement again this past summer. I jumped over one. Well, the hard surface play area was part of that parking lot. And then the painting of classroom walls, again, that was a district direct project that Mr. Rana took care of. And then the bus barn sewer piping, there was some damage below grade piping that needed to be corrected in front of the bus barn. And then this coming year in the summer, fire alarm panel replacement will happen again, or also at MIS. We're doing the restroom flooring with an epoxy coating, so we'll be upgrading the flooring there. There'll be some other flooring areas throughout the building, mostly in corridors that will get upgraded to that, going to a lower maintenance system for floor tile. And then the renovation or restoration of some of the 1972 areas of the roof area. So those will be restored to get a 20-year warranty, and that'll be the first phase of multiple phases of that building, probably over 4 or 5 years. On the horizon then is replacement of the gym floor, classroom window treatment replacement, which I mentioned at the other schools, and then some select upgrades that kind of as things come up. The district has a budget for those annual projects that they can work through directly with contractors or with their own team. Some of those little smaller items fall into that category. At junior high, the chiller replacement was completed last summer before the cooling season kicked in. And then Dave took on some of the toilet compartment replacement too. Some of the partitions were replaced. For upcoming things at MJ is the storage shed, which will be going through the spark process with the village before that can be launched over the summer. And then we have some flooring replacement at the main vestibule and the grand hallway. And then some asphalt resurfacing, which will also be done direct with the district, through the district. Some of the same things here. While the stairwells, we're looking at replacing the flooring on the stairwells, classroom window treatment. There's a little bit of ponding that's happening on one of the storm structures, and just again, more select flooring and partition replacement that will continue at that school as things surface, those needs surface. So that's a brief overview. I'll just spend a minute on this because I'm sure I'm past 5 minutes here, but we structured this a little differently from last year, this year, so we can move things around to keep them in categories. You'll see that we're now in year really 4 and 5 of the process. The two green columns represent that we've knocked off the priority 1 items and a good chunk of the priority 2 items. And that's the way this has been tailored. So over the next 2 years, we shall get through those priority 2s and we'll be into the priority 3s. Now, the priority 3 becomes a priority 1 because we keep moving through the years. But we're really being focused on making sure that we're attending to the things that are highest on the list. And I think that's been universally applaud your administrative team for staying on track with really what this was, the warm, safe, dry umbrella, no pun intended, that is the directive, and that's what they've been staying true to. So at the end of this, at each school, the areas that are grayed out within that report are things that have been completed. So we've moved all those down to the bottom of each category. And then I'll jump to the last page of this is for MES, but you'll see this at the bottom of each school's tally. And that just shows where we're at on an annual basis. What we target for the budget for that year. There's a little bit of ebb and flow because some of these are budgets and some of them are true bids. So we know that it's always going to move a little bit, but it keeps us on track of what is affordable for on an annual basis. And then there's a category at the bottom that also allows some of that spending that the districts can do things direct. There's always those things that come up that you need to have attended to. That might be just direct with contractors or maybe even with in-house forces. So we've got that budgeted on an annual basis as well. And I will stop there if there's any questions.
Questions?
So it says it's brightened up. Yeah, the screen's there. Okay. All right. So thank you guys. And thank you to the entire team that you guys, I know, spend a tremendous amount of time meeting and reviewing this plan. And I'm sure it's, it's very detailed. As you guys said, the full plan was gone into more detail in our finance meeting last week. And I brought up some things in that meeting that I just want to restate. It's kind of unclear to me when I'm supposed to bring stuff up as a board member. I know I'm not a member of the finance committee, so that's why I'm going to say it here. I have requested that, we just add a note on who is the project manager for each project was one of the things I suggested, like an enhancement, that we try to track the changes if things are reprioritized or moved, or, has substantial changes, that we kind of notate that so it's easier to track from one iteration to the next. I don't know if I mentioned this in the meeting, and I just wanted to make sure. It would be helpful, I think, to see where the estimates are coming from, who's providing those estimates. So we just know, and maybe a date of when those came. I know some of the estimates potentially still in here are from years ago when this plan first, started. So it would be useful to know, is it one from 2020 or is it as recent as, January of this year? More importantly than all that, well, there's one more issue I just wanted to bring up, and I was going to bring it up again in the Fund 21. To me, looking at this capital improvement plan, the bottom line there should tie to our Fund 21 budget, should tie to the budget. And the numbers vary. And so I don't understand that. So that would be something hopefully we can address at a later point. I'm not trying to derail this meeting. I'm just trying to establish a couple things. I think the most important thing is, as a board member, I feel like this plan is being, is done. And I wish to be kind of more part of the process. An example of, a safety related project that was delayed is still in here, is the window treatments. And I know you guys have acknowledged that shouldn't be a 2-year to 3-year out deal, and that we are, moving that forward on the priority list. So I guess I would just hope, I don't know what is reasonable to get feedback and kind of follow up on that and say, okay, how fast can it happen? And, what's the result? So what are we pushing back to get that priority reestablished on those safety, on that safety issue? And then, sorry, I'm just going to scroll through my notes to make sure I touched anything or everything. I would just say, maybe at the finance committee meeting, the board could play more of a active, have a voice in the plan before it's done, I would love to be a part of that. Thank you.
Just real quick, I thank you again, and thank you for answering my questions at the finance meeting. I submitted some questions, and I know since it's not an action item, I didn't expect them to be answered today. So I look forward to the questions being answered at some point. But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of them. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for presenting, and thank you. I know that something the community, I think, is aware of, maybe not, but you guys do meet on a regular basis with our staff members, so that, Dr. Shaw and Mr. Rana. So this, while it's a capital plan and it has to get presented, this is a living, breathing document. Tomorrow, it could change 100%. Not likely, but it could change. Things can change. So I think something the community should realize is that it is analyzed on a weekly basis, and changes could be made to that. So thank you for prioritizing that. None of us are architects, none of us are engineers, so we appreciate the help. At least I appreciate the help that you guys do in prioritizing the projects. I know you're probably sick of me. I always say, when are we going to do the junior high roof? And you always assure me that there's other projects that need to be done first. And I appreciate that, and you get me off the ledge, so I appreciate that as well. But so thank you, and just good work on that, and then living, breathing document that can always be adjusted and stuff. So
On that, I would just like to thank Dan. He put together at our finance committee. We got some feedback from our finance committee about the bidirectional amplifier not being in the capital plan, and so today, he actually put it in there for me tonight. So the capital plan that you see presented tonight, Kelly Lynn is going to switch the one that was on the agenda with the new one. So to your point of it changes regularly when we have something come up or we get feedback from the board or a board committee, we do take that information and we take action on that. And we did that. So thank you for putting that in there. And that's reflected in the capital plan that you see tonight. Yeah, you're welcome.
Did the cameras, I think the security cameras, did that get added too, or is that
Sure.
pending or?
So the security cameras are funded out of Fund 21. So some of that kind of goes to your statement, Mrs. McMillan, about the capital plan and the Fund 21. So since it's warm, safe, and dry, there are some components that are, you'll see next month at the Finance Committee that actually Mr. Henson and I were working on today in his budget that are not in the capital improvement plan with the architects and the engineers and our building and grounds director, but they're through with our director of technology and security. And so those cameras are embedded into Fund 21, but they're not in our capital plan. They're a security component that's embedded in our budget, but not public facing in the capital plan. Security.
So maybe the thing to do here is to break out the funds in the bottom of this.
It's going to be broken out by function. It's just a technical issue. And when you see this next month, we actually added a column to Mr. Henson's report that added those functions, just so you can see it broken out. We gave it a little more detail in what he's going to show you next month today. Yeah, we were working on that today. Yep. Thank you. I know there wasn't any questions. Thank you for standing up there.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
So along the same lines, we'll move right into Fund 21 update.
Okay. All right. So we have our O&M Fund 21 analysis. I didn't update the date, so it should reflect March 29th. So per board policy, we have a mandated annual reporting. There are 6 items in that annual reporting mandate. This year's proceeds, how much we spent last year, our estimated expenditures for the current year, statuses of projects that are funded by this year's proceeds, and then the description of proposed projects for next year. And then number 6, the updated master facilities plan, which you just saw. So the policy, this is the board policy that's very unique to Mokena with the limiting rate referendum and the purpose of the policy. So that's included in the report. And the identified expenses are security measures, HVAC, parking lot and walkways, interior surfaces, and the facility envelope. So those are the areas that we really focus on. So number one, the current fiscal year's estimated proceeds. So we're in fiscal year 25, so that's based on levy 23 and levy 24, which we just finished in December. We always put 0.3% of the referendum levy into Fund 21. They're both part of Fund 20. So we've got total revenue of $2,178,788 between a little bit of interest income and our levy. Our 3-year revenue projection. So we have revenue projections. So we do know that our FY24 is an audited number. We're in FY25 where we had 3.4 CPI. Next year we'll have part of a 3.4, and we also know that levy 25 will come in at 2.9%. And then I use 2.7 CPI as assumptions going forward. And then number 2 is the expenditures of the proceeds during the previous fiscal year. And this is audited expenditures. When we go through the audited expenditures, we actually drill down all the way down to the penny of what we've spent through Fund 21. So this is the overarching of everything that we spent on the first page, $2,169,099.15. And then the totals by the building, at the district level, 39,000. MES, MIS, MJ, MES had the majority of the funds spent this year. MIS, not as much. And MJ, this is the other part of your chiller. And so then we go into the next few slides are a very thorough accounting of every single dollar and penny that was spent in Fund 21. So there's broken down by district, and then we break it down into the elementary school, and you can see how everything has been spent. It's the orange ones, and then we get into the blue with the intermediate school, and you can see everything that was done at the intermediate school. You just heard what those projects were from our architect. And then at the junior high, what's also embedded in here are the security measures. And then we get into number 3, which is the estimated expenditures of the proceeds for the current fiscal year. So we do have budgeted expenditures this year at 3.2 million. And we do have more budgeted than we had in revenue because we had money left over last year. And so part of the directive to me was also that we want 0 fund balance in Fund 21. The community has said, use this money for warm, safe, dry. We don't want to carry over any fund balance. So we try to spend down all the revenue that we receive in Fund 21. And you can see that how this is broken out between architect engineering, building construction, roof maintenance, maintenance services, asphalt, site improvements, and then security. I also started to do an amended budget, put the bidirectional amplifier in here, more security measures that we're doing in here. So that will also, you'll start and see that process next month. You'll see the first draft. And then here is a stacked bar chart. Oh, you got ahead of me, like a stacked bar chart of the expenses by function. And you can see what these functions are. Like the purple is safety and security. So it's a very small part of what we're spending our money on. And then we've got asphalt and concrete is the red. So this year in 25, it was the Willowcrest Road. It was the parking lot. There was significant money spent on asphalt and concrete. Maintenance and services, those are things that we're getting fixed. That's people that we're actually paying. Building construction is orange. And so the construction is most what we've been doing in equipment. And then the architect and engineering services are in the blue. So it kind of gives you a perspective of where we're spending our money on what. And this is, I'm back on this stacked bar chart again to Mrs. McMillan's question. Safety and security is in the purple. And you can see that that's the function that I'm going to be referencing when I went back into the function. It's still in Fund 21, but here's the different things that we use. And this is what I meant. Yep. Sometimes the picture kind of tells a little more of the story. And then number 4 was the status of projects underway that are funded by the FY25 proceeds. So this is what we use our FY25 money on. The completed projects of the window laminate, the front door replacement. These are the projects that that Dan had talked about also. They're listed here in this report. and currently underway. Again, same projects that Dan talked about. And then our projections. So these are our expenses. We know in 25 we've got greater projected expenses because we had additional fund balance that we're planning on spending. And then as we go forward, we take that $1 million out. And so this is what it looks like going forward. So the blue is actually the fund balance. So last year you can see we had a high fund balance. Orange is the change in the fund balance. So as it takes a big dip, that means that's the change in the fund balance. We want the blue and the orange line to kind of meet in the middle at zero. There is a little bit of fund balance increasing as our revenue is increasing about by 3. And I did bring some stuff out of the expenditures. So the expenditures are only increasing by about 2. So we do have a little bit of increase in fund balance, and we'll work that out as we go through the next few years. And then number 5 is the description of the proposed projects for next year. And so next year we also have some more work on the unit vents. And this is again something that was already talked about in our capital plan. And so they're listed out here with our estimate for 26 at 2.5 million. Okay, that's 121.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shaw. Questions?
Sorry, I want to repeat that. Okay, Dr. Shaw, just a quick question. I meant to ask this during the capital improvement plan. The playground project, is that all closed out? Are we whole, or is that still outstanding?
The playground project is still outstanding and is not complete.
Okay. And then, you know, one of the things, again, I'm just going to touch on briefly is, you know, the finance committee went into detail a little bit. I think, was the presentation at the finance committee meeting different than this one, right?
I went through the slides that had what we actually did and the dollar amounts. I went through those slides a little more detailed than here.
Here, okay.
When it got a little more granular into, we spent $5,000 here. I went through those. They're all in here for your review, but I went through them a little more detailed.
Okay, yeah. So I was just going to note for you know, that we did go into more detail and we did ask questions and get answers. One of the things, again, I brought up during that meeting, and I would, you know, just say it again because I don't know where the best place to say this is. It feels like this plan is done and completed, and I would like to, you know, be more a part of the process, or, you know, collaborate a little bit more and have an opportunity to work with you all on this part, or on this plan in some capacity. Maybe that's in the finance committee meeting, but as it stands right now, I don't know where the right place to do that is. So I would just hope that we can work that out. And, you know, looking at that, the one that you pointed out, this, the color coding by function, you can see the allocation of safety and security. And so you can see, I think the calculation I did quickly was, you know, less than 2% of the Fund 21 balances. Now, I will say that there are projects that I would consider safety related, but just because they don't fall in this function, it looks like we're not having those. But there are projects that have been done beyond the security expenditures that are coded to this 2546. But, you know, one example of the things that I think that would be helpful is for the board to have those conversations where potentially we could decide on allocating that money a little bit differently, and maybe allocating more towards that safety and security function 2546.
Can I hop in there for a second?
Well, I would prefer, I just
Okay.
I could finish, and then you can. So one example of, if you guys want to just Google this, it's called the I Love You Guys Foundation. And we heard extensive, Jim was there, Eric was there, presentation at the IASB conference from them. And there's a lot of area districts working with them to implement just improvements in safety programs in schools. And it's not to say what we're doing is insufficient. It's just to say there are a lot of districts doing new things and there are companies offering new things. And so that would be my goal, is to have a conversation, have an opportunity to talk to the board and decide potentially to reallocate, differently out of this fund more towards the safety and security.
Do you have a
Yeah,
comment?
just a comment on it. That is like very specific safety security when that is where we're putting that item in that function. But for example, the window laminate kind of fell under construction. The front door fell under construction. Those are also safety issues. They just weren't in that specific function.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I recognize.
Yeah,
there's
okay.
Stuff that we've done.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I just wanted to
Right.
say that a lot of it is safety. It's just not specifically. Yeah. Yep. Okay. You're welcome.
Any other questions? I mean, I just piggyback off that. I mean, there's several projects that we do that could be classified as safety that are not in that function, right? I mean,
Correct.
anything that's done with flooring where you're fixing a tile, any kid could slip and fall, and that could be classified as safety in some people's eyes. But in
Life
that
safety,
in
correct.
that function, it's maintenance
Mhm.
on flooring, but it's safety, right? We have bathroom partitions that are rusted out at the bottom that could fall over, that or hit a student or what that could be deemed as safety. So that this notion that only 2% because the ISB functions are defined isn't truly reflective of what could be classified as safety in our warm, safe, and dry. So,
True. Yeah, true.
just because it doesn't fit the ISB box doesn't mean that we're not safe, putting safety things. So,
It could fall in multiple things, but
It could.
according to
And
ISB
you got-
rules,
and-
this is what you need to put it in.
right.
And in all fairness,
Yeah.
we are working with the police, the fire, our admins, our principals, our teachers to identify issues that need to be addressed within our buildings, and they are. And I'm not going to talk about what those are because that's not real particulars. But the idea that we are withholding or not spending money on our schools is incorrect. And the schools are being kept safe, no matter how it's officially classified on that report.
All right, Dr. Shaw, you're up again.
Okay.
5-year projections.
Okay. 5-year projections. We've historically done this in the March Finance Committee. And again, I needed to update the front slide to reflect that it's the board meeting in today's date. Sorry. All right. So the summary, the agenda, we're going to go through the operating funds. I did have some 5-year projections, historical data. We've been doing this for 7 or 8 years. So I have 7 or 8 years worth of historical data. So my point in including some of those is that this is what it looked like in this specific given year. And where it said we were going to end in, say, 2023 isn't necessarily where we ended in 2023 because things change. What we base these financial projections on are the current set of circumstances and assumptions that we have today. And those assumptions and those circumstances can change. We had COVID, we had ESSER money, we've had reduction in general state aid. We've changed the way the state does funding from to evidence-based funding from student attendance. So I just want to say we're doing these projections based on this year's assumptions and the data that we have today. So there's some historical 7 or 8 years worth of them. And you can kind of see that we target our projections with a given set of assumptions. And then where we say we're going to end up isn't always where we end up. Sometimes we're better, sometimes we're worse. Sometimes we have stone quarry strikes and can't spend our fund balance down. So it happens. And then we've got this year's fiscal year budget, an 11-year chart, 6-year chart, our aggregate history. And then I'm going to itemize what the assumptions are that we're using. And then the assumptions by fund, because we do use fund-based accounting, the expenses by fund. And what's in the full projection that we went through at the Finance Committee had all of the operating funds. Tonight's presentation, we're just going to look at the aggregate. So it's all the funds added together. The operating funds include our ed fund, our O&M fund, transportation, IMRF, Social Security, working cash, and tort. We have non-operating funds, which are debt service, capital project, and life safety. So the first few slides are our historical projections. So this was the first one that we did in the school year, fiscal year 2018. And at that point in time, given the 35 and 65% of fund balances, with what was happening in 2018, the projections for the fund balances were higher than our board policy of 35 to 65%. The same thing in 2019, all of a sudden it had a downward slope based on the prepayments of property taxes. This is kind of when Will County changed the rules that year. So we didn't get our revenue in. So there's just things that happen outside of our control, external factors. 2020, we had the purposeful spend down and then the projections going forward. 2021, 22, 23. So this was last year's, when we take a look at 2024. One more. And so then we're at 2024 through 2029. And you can see that last year we had our red line, which is what we're looking at for our 5-year projections out, sitting right between the two blue lines, which are the 35 and 65% fund balance guidelines. And then when we went through this year, we've changed the look a little bit with a green line in the middle. The two blue lines are still the 35 and 65%. We have our audit from FY24. When we look at last year's budget for 24, we planned on ending the year with 13.6 million, and we actually ended with 16.5 million. When we look at the 24 to the 25 slide, we had more fund balance left over. Some of that was in Fund 21. We didn't spend it all down. Why we've got that big operating deficit in Fund 21 for this year was because we had fund balance left for a cash basis in our accounting system. So it's what you've got in the bank on June 30th. So we do know with our projections, it keeps us within our 35 and 65% fund balance guidelines per board policy. And this is the current base scenario for all of our funds. This is our historical summary. So we do know that this is what has happened in the past. And so what we take a look at mainly are the surplus and deficit lines. And so we do have our year-end fund balances at the bottom, which show that we stay within the 35 and 65. We did have higher than 65% in our fund balances in years 20, 21, 22, 23. So 24, we were at 64%, and this year we're projected to be at 55% for our projected year-end fund balance, which is right in the middle at 55%. So our current 5-year projection keeps us between the 35 and 65%. So we do know that with our budget, we do have, we pretty much FY25. So we are going through the amended budget process. This is based on the current board approved budget. When this budget was approved, there was still data that was not in the tentative proposed budget. So we had some data from the time the board approved this budget. Some of that information we get a little bit in timeliness. For example, some of our grants, some of our transportation reimbursement. So there was some revenue that didn't get captured in 25 and some expenditures. So we do know through that amended budget process, we'll be tightening up budget 25. This is based on the board approved 25 budget. So we do look at our 5-year projection between our board approved 35 and 65% fund balances. Our projection summary, we can see that in FY25, we do have a 1.5 million deficit. The biggest part of that is in our Fund 21 because we had the $1 million fund balance from last year. So our projected deficit in 26 is 500,000. But we also know that there was some revenue in our budget that didn't get put into our budget. So we have to work with the current budget that's board approved. We know through the amended budget process, this is going to tighten up. We know that going forward. But these are the current assumptions that we have. This is our current budget. So you can see in this current budget that we do have this $1.7 million deficit. And the biggest part of that is our O&M referendum money. And so as we move forward, we know that that will tighten up. Here's the revenue assumptions that I used. We actually had our estimated EAV. Those numbers came in yesterday from the tax assessor, so we were getting those numbers. So we actually have an actual for 2024. And then our CPI, these are the assumptions that we're using with the 2.7 going forward for our revenues. We have new property at 2 million going forward each year, changed to our EAV at 2.5, which is an assumption. We do have our tax collection rate at 99.5%. Mokena is a very supportive community. We do have a tax collection rate that's almost perfect. So inside here, we also increased the transportation levy by 150 and increased IMRF and Social Security by 65,000 each to work on those specific funds, which caused a decrease in our education fund levy, which as we move forward, we'll manipulate that transportation levy back down and put that money back in the ed fund so that it will look a little different each year as we go forward. These are just the assumptions for this year. So our non-levy assumptions, our impact fee, we do make the assumption that interest rate's going to go down at some point in time this year and then in the future, as we've had some pretty high interest rates the last few years. And then our registration, our food service revenue staying flat, our state funding increasing 30,000 next year and then staying flat. And then we have our assumption that our federal title funding is going to remain flat. And then in our O&M fund, we were putting 500,000 into our O&M fund. We hit 500,000 in EBF. So we put 250,000 in the ed fund and then 250,000 in the O&M fund going forward. Building rentals increased by 5%. And then our transportation, we do anticipate a bigger jump in our state transportation reimbursement from purchasing the buses rather than leasing the buses. Since we had a greater expenditure out, we'll be able to claim more depreciation in the transportation, which we do get a significant amount of our transportation expenses reimbursed. And then in our IMRF, the corporate personal property replacement tax remaining flat. And so with our aggregate revenue projections, we do show our total local revenue going up 3% next year and then 2.6 as we go out. And then our evidence-based funding staying flat. And then our other state funding, which is our transportation, we do expect that to go up every year. And then our total federal revenue, that's projected to go down and then stay flat as we go across. So we do have a total revenue increasing 2.3, 2.4% each year. With our aggregate revenue projections, we do get 86% of our funds from local funds, 10% from state, and 4% of our money comes from federal funds. The assumptions that we also have built in, the assumptions are in the blue numbers, the contract increases, our biggest expense is salary and benefits. So those are our salary and benefits expense assumptions. And then health insurance, that's pretty conservative. That probably would be a bigger number in health insurance than 88555 going forward. And then our average benefit and our average certified FTE value, and that's based off of data from our Illinois report card. Salary and benefit expense assumptions. Again, here's our total salary budget and then our total health insurance budget for FY25. And our education fund expenses, other expenses, purchase services flat, supplies and materials, anything that costs $500 or less at 2%, capital outlay flat, and then other objects, which are special ed tuition and debt payment, and non-cap equipment, anything between $500 and $5,000 at 2% going forward. So our aggregate expenses going forward, salary and benefits, we can see those salary and benefits going up 4.3, 4.4, 3.5 through the next 3 years. And our all other expenses, we did bring capital outlay down because Fund 21 is in here. We took that $1 million out next year. So we have a decrease at 12% for next year and then 1% and less than 1 going forward, with a total expenses at -2 for next year and then 3 and 2 going forward. So they're very close revenue and expenses. The Biggest part of our expense projections, again, like I said, we're salary and benefits. Purchase services are also people that we hire, purchase services being our outsourced custodial contract. We also have purchase services for special ed transportation. We have a very healthy 11% capital outlay compared to other districts, and that is really our Fund 21 capital outlay. And then the projections, as you can see, this year was high. Next year it does decrease because of the removal of the capital expenditures in Fund 21. And then as it increases going forward. So here's just the FY25 through FY30 with our budget ending right at 15 million at the end of FY25, and then decreasing through the next 5 years, still maintaining fund balance between the 35 and 65% board policy guidelines.
Any questions for Dr. Shaw?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to I want to say thank you so much. Your attention to detail and all of this really makes it so easy for me to look at these numbers and understand where we are.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much.
And trying to pay attention to the board policy guidelines and everything else along the way. I'm sure that makes it even easier. I'm sure it does. But thank you.
Okay, Dr. Shaw, you know what? I have a couple questions, but can you just quickly, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you this ahead of time. Maybe I should skip it. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just going to say it. If you're not prepared, then you just tell me.
That's not fair. We have a board policy
Okay.
about this, and we have a board policy.
Hold on.
Try-
I think
No,
point
no.
of order. I have the floor right now. Mr.
Quite
Bush,
honestly,
Mr. Bush,
You are
All right.
violating
Just-
board policy. You're not being fair to board.
Mr. Bush,
All right.
I'm speaking.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. So Terry, you probably know this, but in this one page, it says current assumptions have deficit budgets for the next 5 years.
Mhm.
That seems a little probably not great if you're the public. And so I just wanted to give you, can you just explain that for a moment? And if you're not prepared or you're uncomfortable, I'm fine with moving on.
Yeah, I would rather put some bullet points together for you.
All right. So my second question is, I was just curious. You said that you knew the EAV for 24. Is it pretty much in line with what we had estimated?
It is.
Okay.
It is pretty much in line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And then out of curiosity, and same thing as earlier, I just noticed this because you pointed it out. I didn't even catch that this capital outlay went down so drastically.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any insight? Or I mean, if
yeah,
you're not
that one,
okay,
that is because of the additional $1 million of expenditures in 2025 because we had that high fund balance last year. It's a take it out of the budget for FY26, right? That's why that capital outlay went down.
it was in our budget, and now we're taking it out.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
And it wasn't there before, and now we're getting trued up.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, yeah, thank you for all of this. And I think the only thing left that I just wanted to point out is the same thing as the prior two presentations, that this was gone over in more detail. I appreciate your time on all this. In our finance committee meeting, I guess the board finance committee meeting last week, and some of my sentiments there were the same. Is it feels like this is kind of a done deal. And one example that I brought up in that meeting was that we're projecting 0 full-time equivalent additions over the next 5 years. So that would be something that I just wish at some point we can incorporate the board into more collaborative conversations on some of this planning and see and if it stays the way it is, but at least give us an opportunity potentially to participate in having input in that. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just kind of talk about the FTEs a little bit. I mean, we are talking about potential FTEs for next year. So we'll be bringing you some information at the April board meeting, and we'll get some information out to you prior to that, just about some thoughts and some potential recommendations for next year. So that is on the way.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Also, thank you for explaining the fund balance. I know back to the fall, people have been following long enough. We were very nervous and had lots of discussions about how the public would perceive that $1.5 million deficit without fully understanding what that means, because the vast majority of that is carryover in fund balance for projects in the capital plan that did not get done due to timing issues, and they cross fiscal years. So that's not a true core operating deficit. So, thank you for that. And that, trying to explain that. I know in the fall, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the true core deficit, operating deficit is, and it's not anywhere close to that number.
It's not.
The other thing that contributes to that is we made a decision as a board to stop leasing our buses because that is more expensive than purchasing them. However, in the short term, you have to buy those buses. So then that becomes, $100,000, $200,000 expense potentially, as opposed to a $50,000 lease. But that lease goes for a lot longer and you get nothing in return for it. You have to turn the bus back in 5 years, where if you get a bus that, after 5 years, it lasts for 10 years, the school district has no expense other than regular maintenance, gas, things like that for those 5 years, and you're ahead in the long run. So there are expenses built into that number that make it look, and I know we talked about that. So you just don't want that to be perceived as, oh my gosh, they have $1.5 million structural deficit. It's just not true.
Yeah,
so
it's not.
But we have to project it in the budget. So thank you.
Well, cash basis accounting, it is another factor. If we're accrual, it might look different.
Very much so.
Yeah,
but
right.
Most schools are on cash basis. So, yep. Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Shaw? Okay. Thank you very much. You can catch your breath a little bit. You'll be back up in a little bit. All right. Well, Finance Committee update, Ms. Linsky. I think we've almost covered everything for the meeting. So this could be the quickest update ever.
Yeah, it is the quickest update ever. So we'll go to the next meeting for the finance meeting is April 14th at 7 p.m. We'll be discussing special education with Mrs. Munt and technology with Mr. Hudson. And we'll have Trumco contractors in. Right. Quickest update ever, Mr. Bush.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Next up is Policy Committee, Ms. Post.
I'll try to go fast as well. I want a good report from Jim as well. I just want to note there's an action item for the Vision 2030 that we've had. We haven't really discussed it, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I was listening to the legislative meeting last Friday. It's like drinking from a fire hose, how many bills there are pending. 4 cell phone bills, an AI task force. Senator Hastings, our senator, is sponsoring one that has rules for school districts to develop threat assessment procedures. So there are a lot of bills pending. If you have a topic in particular you want focus on, I offer that to anyone at the table, the teachers. I have a passion for legislation. So if you want something in particular followed, please let me know. And that's it. Do I get a good report, Jim? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. Well, no questions. That's a good report. All right. Superintendent, Mr. Stein.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I'm going to get a good report. So the Clear software information here is very similar to what you saw last month. I do want to emphasize that the district currently does not have a detailed process or a mechanism to investigate families that potentially may not have appropriate residency in District 159. I would like to clarify, this is based on a 3-year agreement, not a 5-year agreement. And I would also advocate that it only be one user for the district. You know, I would also say that Clear, which is owned by, I think their parent company is Thomson Reuters, they did not reach out to me soliciting. I have been investigating, as you are aware, what additional mechanism can we put into place in order to look into the potential of families that don't live in the district. One of the things that you had looked at in the past and that I was looking at was a private investigation company that is in the area that some school districts use. In terms of looking at that, was speaking with colleagues, and a number of our local districts have gone to utilizing Clear software. And it is a much easier mechanism to just check everybody that is within the district. And then it gives you like a percentage probability of whether or not you need to look more deeply into these families. And then you can do more advanced searches. And so that's what this software allows you to do instead of engaging in kind of old-fashioned private investigation. So a lot of school districts are moving away from that private investigator type of work and moving into more of this analytic software data kind of work. So that's kind of the Clear software. A number of these things are some repeats from last month that were informational items. You'll see some job descriptions that we're looking to include here for action for MJHS assistant principal, HR director, and maintenance. It was kind of talked about a little bit already, but we have the bidirectional amplifier as an action item. MSC has installed systems like this in some of our other local municipalities, and they came in with the lowest quote for us, and it was considerably lower than the other organization that submitted a quote. I am also recommending that the board move forward with the Illinois Association of School Boards Administrative Procedures Online. We talked a little bit about that last month, so you will see an action item there for that. I do want to give you a brief update on the Superintendent's Committee on Custodial and Maintenance Services. The committee has met twice since the last board meeting. We're looking at various scenarios for next year, and we'll be able to give you a detailed report on that next month. We can get you some, between that time though, we can get you some intermediate information. We did have the bid opening. When was that, Terry? Is that Tuesday? Monday. Thank you. Good grief. We had opening, so we're kind of collating all of that information together right now, and we'll be able to give you some more detailed information soon. As I've kind of said in the past, custodial service companies do not normally provide maintenance employees. It's kind of asking them to do something that they just don't do. They don't have those personnel available to them. We've had it here. I think that I can speak for all of the members of the committee to say we believe it would be a much better work product for us to have the 3 maintenance people brought back in-house. It is not a cost-neutral thing. I will be the first to admit it. Dr. Shaw will be the first to admit it, and we've talked about that at the committee level. Currently, we're paying approximately $250,000 for our 3 maintenance people annually. It would probably be an increase of about $22,000 or so to bring them in-house, but we think it gives us a better work product. And so that's what I have. You're welcome.
Questions, Mr. Stein?
Jim?
Good report.
No, I said thank you.
Oh.
All right, wait, we got questions yet?
Yeah.
Not done yet.
Here we go. All right.
There you go.
Ms. McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. I'm going to say it again. I just really appreciate what you have brought forth on that IASB admin procedures.
Oh, sure.
I met with Mr. Gurney today, and I think that's really going to make a huge difference with getting him set up for success. So I I appreciate that. A couple things for your board committee on the maintenance. And it's just some kind of holes in my mind. So hopefully you can
Sure.
address this in your report for next month.
Sure.
And I can send you an email, but one is, it's unclear how we've come up with that $250,000 number from the contract. So I would just
Okay.
ask that you just maybe provide a little bit more clarity to that. And
Will
then
do.
I was comparing the maintenance job descriptions and the scope of work as outlined in the Alpha contract. And there are some variations between the two, specifically when it comes to the maintenance portion of that contract.
Okay.
So I would just ask that you please, just lay those next to each other and make sure we're covering everything that was in that contract for that maintenance portion.
Right. And
So-
I'll definitely work with Dave and Terry on that. And
Okay.
what we will have people doing will be more extensive. I can assure you that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed that way. That's it. Thank you.
Will do.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Stein. Next up, Dr. Johnson.
Report, I provided an update, as I always do, on the professional learning that took place throughout the district in regards to the early release date. I provided an update for the board of actions that have been taken since the last boarding regarding our work with the advanced learner programming and our task force recommendation. This month kicked off our work with Northwestern University Center for Talent Development and the professional development that they will be providing at each building over the course of the next 3 months. In March, they visited MES. This is for all teachers. I'm sorry, I am been sick for 2 weeks and I cannot get over it. So sorry. So this learning is for all of our teachers. All of our teachers will be taking place in this learning because we have advanced learners in all of our classrooms. In addition, I have been working very closely and ongoing with the University of St. Francis to get everything set up for the teachers who have expressed interest in receiving the gifted endorsement. Later on in the agenda, you'll see that MOU that allows us to move forward with that before the summer registration starts. I've also been working with Learner's Edge to secure seats for the course that our other teachers will be taking if they're not pursuing the gifted endorsement. So we will be ready to go for all teachers if they so choose to start this summer. In addition, Mr. McAtee, Mrs. Chorley, Mrs. Pierrick, and I have been looking at some preliminary data just to get a feel for when we think about our cluster grouping classrooms, how many teachers we potentially may need to service our advanced learners in those clusters. It is all very preliminary at this point because we don't have spring data. So we're making some assumptions so we can begin to plan for scheduling and thinking about teachers, but those things cannot be finalized until we have those last data points end of the year, beginning of the summer. In addition, we will be offering 2 parent informational sessions on April 29th in person, one at 10 a.m., one at 6 p.m. These informational sessions will be providing updates that we're doing to our programming to our families that are interested to learning more about that so they know what we will be offering in the 25-26 school year. FYI, the same content will be shared at each meeting, even though they're at 2 different locations. It's not like MES is MES specific and the junior high is junior high specific. It's the same information, just trying to vary times and locations to best meet the needs of families' busy schedules. That information will also be shared out in terms of the save the dates in our principals' newsletters, as well as on social media. Actually, that went up today, and it will continue to until the day. I've provided an update for you regarding our 6th through 8th grade Tier 1 Social Emotional Learning Committee. Our teachers are in the midst of piloting their 2nd program right now. We will be meeting together after spring break to debrief on both of the pilots, and we hope to have a recommendation for you at the April board meeting as an informational item of which program they would like to implement in the building next school year. And we also have our teacher social studies committee that is in the midst of their, the K-5 social studies committee that's in the midst of their 2nd pilot as well. I was able to visit Mrs. Macy's classroom yesterday and see the students learning about the 3 branches of government. So it's been fun to see all these programs in action and see how the students are responding. And again, we will be meeting right after spring break to for the teachers to turn in their rubrics, talk about their experiences, and then collectively making that decision of what recommendation we'd like to bring you in April. Last but not least, I have a couple more things, I guess. We were visited by Valley View School District recently, so I just wanted to say thank you to the teachers that hosted and our instructional coach that supported that visit. Our first grade teachers who welcomed them into the classroom, had conversations about our phonics instruction and the program that we're using. And we had our monthly articulation with the high school this month, and we were visited by the social studies department from the high school. So they were able to get into at least one of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes, as well as then debrief with the 8th grade department, have some conversation about digital literacy, celebrations they're seeing in both freshman level and 8th grade, and then talking about the various pathways that students have access to once they leave 8th grade when it comes to the social sciences their freshman year. The last thing I did include, I wanted to celebrate 2 of our staff members, Mrs. Catane and Mrs. Youngblood, 2nd grade teacher and instructional coach. They recently presented at the Illinois ASCG's conference Pump Up Primary for kindergarten through 2nd grade teachers. They presented on the independent reading practices that they've worked together and collaborated together over the past 2 years. So it's just really neat to see our teachers feeling empowered to share the great things that they're doing in our classrooms with other educators across the state. And that is what I have.
Oh, he got a great. She got a great report. Everyone else got good. Wow.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
That's
We're doing St. Francis.
Yes.
We're giving people opportunity.
man.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a lot of opportunity.
Questions?
More two quick comments. Dr. Johnson, thank you. And I applaud all of your efforts in this Advanced Learners Initiative. And one suggestion, you can take it or not, is, I noticed that this informational meeting is on one day at 2 times. So if there's a way that we can record maybe so that the parents that aren't available that one day, could see the presentation that you're going to do. I know there's been a lot of interest in that. And then the second thing is this Lincoln Way part, I just really appreciate. It's helpful and I enjoy reading this. And so thank you for including that each month.
Yep. I will add, in addition to the presentation, I am working on a district digital guidebook regarding our advanced learner programming offerings moving forward. So that will be published at the same time as the parent presentations. So if there is anyone who is unable to attend or would just prefer to look at something as opposed to listen, that will be available. And as always, they can call, email me. I'm more than happy to answer questions and talk through things. But that will be another resource for families. Per our parent engagement session we had with the Advanced You Were There task force. So that will be available for families to reference as well on our website.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for also highlighting, all the schools that come and visit us. I know I mentioned that in the newsletter in my 100-word or less section that I'm allowed, but imitation is the best form of flattery. So the fact that we have, staff that are from other schools that are trying to come in and see what we're doing is pretty awesome. And just you highlighted the amount of presentations that our administrators and our teachers are doing at conferences also highlights that we're doing a lot of good stuff here at Mokena 159, and that imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I do want to highlight it as well because I know I want to highlight our teachers who are opening up their classrooms as well. Like that, not only are they thinking about, yes, I can have someone see, but think about the impact that they're having on the broader educational community as well by doing that. So I think that's important to highlight.
I just have one final thing. I just really want to applaud all your efforts on our social media. It's well noticed by many people and you're doing a great job. So thank you. And I know that's takes a lot of effort too. So
I appreciate that. I will note though that it is a team effort. I do take the significant lead on it, but we do have a plan. Yeah. Our principals, we do have a plan together once a week. Like we have a whole plan, so they are involved in it as well. But I appreciate that. Yes, a significant, very significant part of it. Yeah, I've had to run I ran the statistics recently about viewers, statistics of how many people have followed us since November. It's really impressive to see the increase in engagement that we're having with our community through that. So thank you for noticing. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Shaw, you back ready to go again? Round two,
Sure.
3,
Got a
4,
little
5,
break.
whatever, 7 maybe.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So in my board report tonight, under my report, there's the February 2025 financial highlights. The financial highlights now has its own place on our website under the business office. There's a report. There's a link on the bottom for financial reports. You click on that link, it takes you to the financial highlights. And then we're just going to, we want to thank Mrs. Kelly Lynn there for helping me with that. I had a vision and she put it on the website. And so we worked together to get that. Well, she did a lot of the work. I just had the idea to get that so you can see that new financial reports in the website. And then there's some nutrition reports from the food service department. The next information item is the Will County Transportation Intergovernmental Agreement for Employee Testing Services. So we've been part of this consortium for years, and it's an information item to continue to just extend that intergovernmental agreement for the next 3 years. It allows us to be part of the process for our bus driver testing. We have the neighbor ingress egress agreements. There's one from 2018 that was approved that needs to be reviewed every 5 years. So it's on there. And then there was another neighbor who also asked for access off Willowcrest Road. And we've had good relations with the neighbors on those. So those are information for action next month. There's the financial and treasurer's reports. There's 10 different reports there for you to take a look at to see how we're doing on a month-to-month basis, what our investments look like, where we at year-to-date on our financial reports, and our state receivables, and where we're invested in our treasurer's investment report. Also, information report, there's the student fees report. Last month you saw the student lunch. Student fees are this month. That's included in your board pack. And then next month, it'll be a combined action item with, so all of the fees are included on one memo with student fees and lunch fees. And our action items that we've got tonight are the bidirectional amplifier that we've talked about, the bus barn fire panel, our summer helpers for O&M and tech, the 3 maintenance staff positions and job descriptions, transportation food service salaries, and then the MIS roof restoration project. Came back from Tremco. We got 4 proposals. Our lowest proposal was $416,000. Last month, the board approved $600,000 for the project cost. So I put an information memo on your table tonight. So everybody should have this information memo. So you'll have it for a month. We're going to enter into the agreement pending board approval with Melcor Roofing for the $416,000. And since the board approved the $600,000 project, there's, $184,000 left over. An information item and with the ability to negotiate with Melcor for roof restoration at MES, where last month you saw that big document that I handed everybody. We looked at MES. MES was also included. I didn't print the big document again, but I included some snippets of what MES had a couple spots that we could negotiate with Melcor to still fall within that $600,000. We kind of touched on it when we would do some restoration at MES. So if we can negotiate to get some of those areas, bring an action item to have a addendum to the contract with Melcor Roofing. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask, but information this month. So it's a paper at this point in time. And then also in my board pack, we've got HR from our HR director, Kim Sapanchik, hosted the wellness clinic this week. We had a record of 49 participants in that. So that's the highest number of participants we had in our wellness clinic. Yeah. She did a great job with marketing and getting people to participate. She's also hosting the insurance committees. I think we've got a couple members, board members on the insurance committees. That's also in here with the topics that we're going to be having. And then she also arranged with IMRF and TRS to have IMRF and a TRS person come to each of the schools to sit down and allow our staff members to have meetings with their pension providers. So that's something that's new that's happening that Mrs. Panchik has put together for us. So thank you to her. In our food service, Brittany's making her department hers, that she's training with Ann, getting ready to take over next year. So she went to the GFS food show and she talked a little bit about seeing some new products, might try some new things next year. We've got one new item that the nutrition is on the board pack that pull apart. And then in transportation, we have a new driver signed up with us. So we actually have a sub right now. So we've got 10 routes, 10 drivers, and our first full-time sub that we've had in a long time right now at this point in time. And then in our O&M, we did a lot. You guys heard a lot from O&M tonight. So a special thanks to Dave for all of the work that he's done in our building and grounds and our ad hoc committee and now new outsource, yeah, and very responsive. Thank you, Dave. Yeah. And then you'll see your first draft of the amended budget next month. Yep. And as far as student fees, I had a question about student fees in the finance committee, and I deferred that to Dr. Johnson, and here she is.
I was teaching class that night, so I apologize for not being there. So I did want to provide a little bit of literature and data for you regarding the $75 music fee. That was the question. So if you wouldn't mind taking one, passing it along. So inside the packet, I'm just going to let you know what is in here, and I'll spend time on the first page, but I'll tell you what is behind it. Just from a historical perspective, I wanted to provide you with the original memo from Dr. Cohen last spring when those fees were proposed, just so you had the historical perspective of where that was coming from and why. I did also include when in the month of July, when I was interim superintendent, just an update to that memo because the stipends for the music program had been updated with the new MTA contract. So I wanted to make sure that was there. And then I did also provide, Mrs. Macmillan had asked a question in July before the board meeting about the fees and the district instrument usage. That was an important part of that the conversation that we had at that point as last summer. So I wanted to provide that too, because this really, I believe, kind of really outlines where the fee was coming from in terms of those several categories of students who were who we were asking for that usage fee from. So I just wanted that historical information there for you so you could look at that just as a reminder of like where this started, where we were, and then now the information that I have for you this evening, now that we're well into March, and I'm able to give you some data regarding what that has looked like for the musicians who have been given that fee. So if you wouldn't mind going back to page 1, what I have compiled for you are all of the invoices related to 3 particular categories that relate to that $75 fee. So you're going to see the third from last column are particular to the purchases and repairs of any instruments or accessories, such as I'm learning a lot about music, like the bow, those types of things, related to the larger orchestra instruments. This is not like the violin, but these are the larger instruments like the cellos that we purchase, so the students are not bringing those instruments back and forth from home. Our orchestra has grown extensively. I know Mrs. Macmillan and I were talking about that at the MIS concert. So you can see down that orchestra column this year, these are all of the purchases that we have made as a district down the orchestra column for a total of $13,378.99 to support instruments for our orchestra program for those students who are playing those larger instruments. We have 25 students in the district who we are asking that $75 usage fee specifically for the orchestra instruments. So you can kind of see what that would break down to if we did the math. That comes to $535.16 a student. If we were to purely do the math, we're charging the $75 per student. Percussion is the second from the last column. You'll see that we've made purchases with sticks, mallets, bells. We've made several xylophone purchases. We have one that we're waiting for it to arrive. So you'll see that that says upcoming because we haven't been invoiced for it yet, but the PO is out there. So in our percussion, we have spent $3,000, or will soon when that invoice comes through, $3,620.48. We have 16 students who have been assessed that usage fee. You can see what that would break down if we purely did it by the students who are paying that fee. And then the last column are the larger instruments that are part of the band. These are going to be your larger saxophones. We have some bass clarinets as well that we've purchased to be able to have those additions to our band. You'll see what the prices of those are. And we have 6 students that are currently being assessed that fee and using those instruments. They're large, so they're things that are not easily brought back and forth. So you can see what that breaks down to. We've spent $2,863 on those instruments this year. 6 students who are using those instruments comes out to $477.17 a student if we purely did the math. Overall, we have 47 students that were assigned the instrument usage fees from those 3 categories. Out of those, we have all but 3 families that have paid those. If we were to collect all 47 families, 75 times 47, we would have received $3,525 as a district in revenue, if that's what you want to call it, from the usage fees that went towards the $19,862.47. So I just wanted to provide you the concrete numbers because I know last year as we were in the midst of reclaiming that budget as a district, we weren't 100% sure what that was going to look like. We had some estimates, but I want you to have the most up-to-date information of what purchases have been made in those 3 categories. So as you think about that fee moving into April, you have data to look at to make that decision if you feel that that is what we should be charging or not for the instrument rental or usage. Sorry, I'm trying to change that because we're not renting, they're using. So, okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else they can like clarify, but
A quick, it looks like, I'm trying to understand, because is this the purchase of the instruments? on
it's
some
purchase
places?
or repair.
Okay, because the purchase would be, I can understand, the repair is a cost,
Mhm.
but the purchase, to put the purchase of an instrument and have that inflate to, the $500 per student, then that's to say that these 25 students would be essentially purchasing, you know what I mean? Like because that instrument will be played again next year.
Correct. And
we'll be
that's why we're
collecting
not,
another fee.
that's why we're not, I wouldn't recommend charging a family $535.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to show is that where the $75 fits into this larger picture. So yes, we are only recouping $3,525 this year through the $75 usage fee. But we spent as a whole in just these 3 categories, $19,862.47. So one might say, wow, we're not getting to your point. Like, wow, we spent this much on instruments. But when we think about that over time, we might not have to purchase 5 cellos next year. But then we're thinking of it, well, this is a long-term commitment that over time our families are helping us pay for.
Right. And I think that therein lies the question, right? Is it the board's strategy that we are incorporating families into helping offset the purchase of district assets that will be, you know, I don't know what the useful life of a cello, for example, is. But I guess my other question, and you can follow up with us,
Sure.
would be, is this all of the instruments the district owns and has students using? You know, does
This is not all the
encompass-
district instruments the district owns. These are the instruments that were purchased this fiscal year.
So, you know, to look at the whole picture and say, what other instruments do we own that students are using and not being assessed a fee? Do you see why? Because, you know, we're only assessing a fee for these instruments. But if there are other instruments that we own that students are utilizing and they are not getting assessed a fee, that's where I think
They would fall in these three categories. So orchestra instruments that are large, percussion,
Okay.
and the large instruments.
so there's no other instruments that are being used by
Not
students.
to my knowledge. We do have a few instruments that have been like donated and stuff over time
Uh-huh.
that our band teachers use to like model.
Okay.
If a student's instruments breaks and it's in repair, a student might use that for a week while it's getting. But these are the instruments that the district owns that the students are playing.
Okay, well, thank you. This
Mhm.
is useful. Thank you.
Yeah. And as you look at it, I'm happy to dive into it a little bit deeper, or if you need anything else as you're making that decision.
Okay. So I think that's any other questions for Dr. Shaw and Dr. Johnson snuck into snuck into that one.
Well, I had to follow up because I was not there.
yes,
So thank
so
you
that's
for
good,
letting
yeah.
me sneak in.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I had one more for Dr. Shaw. I'm just kidding. Yes,
I appreciate being a part of that insurance committee. You know, it's very insightful, and I just give you all a lot of props. Everybody who's doing this, it's a huge endeavor to go through these, you know, open enrollment and you know, wellness clinics and things. It's a whole nother set of things the administration is doing. And so thank you. And thank you for welcoming me into the committee. I thought it was a really good first meeting. And yeah, I walked away feeling very happy. And so thank you. And we offer a lot. So I would just say, you know, for employees listening, there is a tremendous amount that these brokers are offering as, you know, supplemental things to the coverage that people can take advantage of. And so that's great. The bidirectional amplifiers, I'm just curious, do we have a timeline on installation for that? Or if you don't know, it's okay.
I believe it's in there. Hold on, let me get there. So when you take a look, it does talk about the project approval and implementation plan. So the equipment delivery is after the order in 14 days or 30 days. So we know that once the board approves it, Dave is going to create a PO. We get the PO sent into them, and then they're going to receive the equipment and staging within 2 weeks. So part of what we need to do is we're going to do that at a time when in the summer. So we know that that is actually going to be installed first week of June, probably the first week of June. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Question?
Not for Dr. Shaw. Can I go back to Mrs. Munt?
Who?
Mrs. Munt.
Mrs. Munt.
Just really quick.
Yeah.
I know that Mrs. Munt isn't here, but she does such a nice job with shout outs. And March 2nd through the 8th was National Social Worker, School Social Worker Week. And I wanted to make sure that that doesn't get lost. And we thank Ms. Andrews, Ms. Brodzinski, Ms. Kittler, Ms. Kroll, Ms. Enns, and Ms. Toch for all that they do. I know that she would have said it much better than me, but I just wanted to make sure that they are recognized.
Okay. For that. Next up, Mr. Henson.
Good evening. I only have two items this evening. The first one is an information item for the purchase of new security cameras for the school district. Basically, we have new structures that exist after they were built after our initial security camera system was installed back in 2019. And we found that we need to add some cameras on there. So the technology department met with the principals, Dr. Shaw, Mr. Reyna, if we're going to buy cameras, we wanted to see if there's any other areas that we should be adding and get them all done at once. We did find some areas where we couldn't see, or we couldn't see far enough with the current camera system, or there's high foot traffic. And so we also met with Tri Electronics, got their opinion on whether we should add cameras or replace. Basically, we found that we needed to add 17 cameras, and we're going to replace one of them to meet all the needs that we know of so far. Hopefully, we don't have any hindsight additions later down the road. We don't want to run into that. So we will be asking the board to purchase 18 new Invisalign cameras from Tri Electronics with installation for the total cost of $21,432 next month. The technology department will pull the cable for that. So are there any questions on the information item? No, good. Oh, wait. I still got one more. I'll be quick, I promise.
Trying to get the grade, Jim.
Yeah, I really want to thank Orland Park School District 230. Scott Anthony met with myself, Kelly, Josh, and Jackie DeWitt from our district office. They let us come visit them earlier last week. I got to sit down and pick his brain over his migration to Q. He showed us a lot, everything they did last year. He actually sits on the Illinois user group chair. Very helpful. Ran us through what we would expect day one, and offered to help Jackie out with hitting the ground running the first day that we go live in July with some enrollment and registration forms, because we identified that as our most important need to have working the first day we turn it on, right? He offered his firsthand knowledge and wanted us to be aware of a gotcha that we did not know about. And basically the gotcha is we can make a form, a family can fill out a form. As soon as the first person enters information in that form, whether they save it or not, we cannot change that form. That form is locked forever. It's just the nature of how it stores information in the database, but they let us know before we publish something and make it go live for family members or staff to fill out. We need to really make sure it's perfect. Otherwise, we might have to go back and delete it and ask the people who previously filled it out to redo it if we have to change it. And we don't want to do that. So, and that is all I had this evening.
Questions? Great. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on, principal reports. Start with Dr. Rolanitis.
Wake that thing up. Okay. I want to say a couple things to add to what was in my written report. We had our students go. We had, I think, 6 students go to our IESA state chess tournament since the last meeting, and we had our first silver award winner. We had a student who did extremely well. Danny Moses got a silver award, so we're really proud of him. He won all but one match. So it's a super complicated system that I don't completely understand how they decide who really wins, because you can win but not get points, and there's all this stuff. So I want to shout out to Danny. So he did a fantastic job. Tomorrow night, if you're bored and you would like to see some basketball, we're having it's 4-on-4 basketball tournament at the junior high tomorrow night from the athletic boosters. So that'll be something that's exciting. We also had I don't want to call it an impromptu visit, but it was kind of quick. Senator Hastings came to the junior high and talked to our 7th graders a little bit about being a state senator. He is family friends with one of our parapros, Danielle Sabowski, and I think she was able to help us kind of facilitate that. Senator Hastings has, we go to Springfield every year. We've accidentally run into him. We've planned to run into him. And he's kind of helped us around the Capitol building. But being a senator, you got a pretty busy schedule, especially when you're down in Springfield. So this time we asked him to come to us. So he talked to all of our seventh graders about how a bill becomes law and a little bit about being a senator here in the state of Illinois. I think a lot of them found it. They don't think about that he lives behind Aurelio's in Frankfurt. They know where that is. They know that's our legislators do live among us. They're not just these people who live in Springfield. I wanted to mention disc golf. A few years ago, we started disc golf, and our second part of the season is starting up here now that, hopefully the weather doesn't snow tomorrow. Now hopefully we're going to try and start that coming up in the next couple weeks. We do have the disc golf course here in town. There are several in the area, and it's becoming a more and more popular sport, so our kids really love doing that. We had our first bowling tournament. Mr. Munch, was it the IESA tournament? No, just a Homer tournament? Okay, so we have our bowling team, and what I can say is we were the best dressed bowling team there. And we tried really hard. So I'm gonna leave it at that. And then I just want to congratulate, and beforehand, we're all taking IAR either this week or next week. And I want to say good job to all the teachers for all the work that they've been doing, and the kids for all that they've been doing. I like to tell people that we take care of the standards. We teach the standards. We don't teach the test. We teach those standards, and we let the test take care of itself. So one thing I do remind the kids is sometimes they think that after IR is over, school is over for the year, which is definitely not the case, especially because it's going to coincide with spring break. That we want to remind the students that everything they do after we take IAR and spring break is preparing them for the next year. So it all just keeps going. It doesn't stop. And really the last thing, and it came up because Dr. Johnson mentioned this, is we have a fantastic relationship with Lincoln Way Central, and they have been for years now, and it's even gotten better now that Dr. Johnson's been kind of working with it. They come over and visit us. We go visit them. They tell us, they give us some advice. We give them advice. They listen to us. And one of the nice things that I like to hear, I talk to the teachers afterwards, and what I hear is them saying, well, you can tweak this and this part and that part, but they're constantly saying, keep doing what you're doing. So that tells me that we're doing a good job, and that we have a nice system going between us and the high school, and that our kids they are very successful when they go over there. So I like to think that Central's the best school because that's where the meteors go. That's all I got. Thank you.
Any questions, Dr. Rolanitis? Okay, Mr. McAtee.
I'm going to hand you this microphone because I know it was better than that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bush. We are neck deep in IAR this week. There's 5 sessions total that the students are taking. And the behind the scenes platform is completely changed this year. So thanks to Dr. Johnson's guidance, Mr. Munch, myself, and Mrs. Gurick, we are learning it on the fly. So we're working through it. It's working. We're getting there. The kids are testing. No one's broken down yet, so it's awesome. But I do want to thank our teachers because, I am literally talking to our teachers 30 minutes before the test time saying, well, try this next time. And it's working. So the teachers have been very cooperative. They've been patient, and everything that we're doing is helping. So thank you to all of our teachers. I forgot to mention this last week. We did our squids. We had our squid dissections. Thank you, Julie, for coming in. It's always a wonderful day. 2 days, actually. Our squid spurt was phenomenal. I had some pictures in there, but I want to thank Megan Horsch, one of our 4th grade teachers. She's the one who organizes it. So thank you to Megan. I know figures the night she's not here. Thank you to Megan for getting all of that organized. We had a tremendous concert last week. Our music ensembles they're just so good. The musicality, our orchestra, they're doing harmonies, and it's just fun to watch. And the kids are enjoying it. So I want to thank our directors, Ms. Clifford, Ms. Shuby, and Ms. Snyder. They're doing a phenomenal job with the kiddos. Claudia Navarro, one of our 5th grade students, finished as a runner-up for the fire department essay. She did a great job. We had the little assembly presentation last week, and it was just nice to see it. You know, she did a great job, so kudos to her. Last thing, Artworks, the Lincoln Way Artworks Festival was this past weekend. All 3 buildings had representation there. It's great to see. You know, I think our schools look the best out of all of them. So kudos to all of our art teachers. And on that note, I also I know it's a ways off, but we did our first art show last year. We call it Launching Imagination. This year we are expanding that. We're going to call it Melodies and Masterpieces. So our directors are going to have some small group ensembles playing throughout the night as well. So it's in my report, but it's a 20, I don't know, just pulled it off, like the 24th. I'll send out lots of information, but we'd love to have you come on. It's a Thursday night from 6 to 8, get to hear some great music, get to see some great artwork. So it'll be a wonderful event for everyone. And that's all I've got.
Questions for Mr. McAtee?
Just a quick comment. The squid dissection, I'm glad I didn't have to touch it, but truly a fantastic program that was put together. Thank you to Ms. Burnt for letting me join her class, but the opportunity that the kids get with that program, I mean, I was blown away, and they all worked so well together. So I just appreciate all that you're doing.
Yeah, the kids, they're a little iffy at first, but by the end they're just digging in, and it's just a wonderful thing.
And they got to up their big set.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAtee. Mrs. Jorley?
Thank you. Tomorrow is Crossing Guard Appreciation Day, so we want to say thank you to our crossing guards. I can't remember the name of the one. K. And then Mrs. Min, Erin Min, who is at Willowcrest and Wolf Road. So just want to thank them publicly for taking such good care of our students who are crossing the street. They keep them safe, and we are very grateful for them. I want to our kindergarten letter started going out today to families who have enrolled their children in the district for the first time, and to our students who are 4 and 5-year-olds that will be attending kindergarten next year that are currently enrolled in our early starter, early childhood classes. Welcoming them to the district, updating them on some of the activities that are coming up. We have our kindergarten information night on April 17th, so we're looking forward to that. Thank you to the kindergarten team for putting a great evening together. They did a wonderful job. I'm looking forward to that as always. And I just want to take a minute to thank the district for supporting our teachers with our advanced learners / getting our professional development or taking classes for gifted education. I think it's going to be so great, not just for students who are advanced learners, but for all of our students. I do believe that rising tides lift all ships, and I think that through our ability to really expand our strategies for differentiation, including, differentiating up, it's going to be great for a lot of kids. So just thank you for supporting our teachers. And our teachers, we have had an amazing turnout. The interest is so high in the amount of teachers that want to get their gifted endorsement. So we're really, really excited for that. Like Mr. McAtee said, IAR, it's going. And our 3rd graders are doing a great job. I try not to make a big deal out of it because they're so little, and I don't want them to start developing that test anxiety. We do support them, of course. We tell them how great they're doing and just how proud of them we are. We just want them to try their best. But as our former superintendent, Dr. White, said, if you focus on the inputs, the outputs will take care of themselves. So kudos to the teachers for all they've done with EL and 95% and math. I'm really actually very much looking forward to our IAR scores in the fall. And finally, thank you to everybody who was able to come out for our family night last week. Is it last week? 2 weeks ago? gosh, okay, 2 weeks ago. It was a great night. It was huge. It was wildly successful. Lots of board members, which was wonderful, whether you were a parent or you just showed up to support. Thank you very much if you were able to make it. We love having you at our events, and you're always welcome. So always feel free to attend those events. We love having you. And thank you to Mrs. Pierrick and the committee, because once again, it was just a great night. It was so much fun. So that's all I have. Mhm, thank you.
Mrs. Chorley,
Yes.
you didn't say anything about the recorder concert
Not yet.
coming up.
That's next
So,
week,
you know, I
Mrs.
mean,
Ost.
hey, I'm just early.
Yes,
I
that's
want it
next
on
month.
the calendar.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Chorley. Next up is Mrs. Briscoe.
Good evening. My report's very short. We approved last month a 3-year agreement lease with Midwest for our bus leases. So that's all I have on that end. But also, Julie already, since Mrs. Munt wasn't here, I hope she doesn't mind us stepping on her toes, but Julie already gave the student services shout out. And I love the Special Olympics, and it's very special and near and dear to me. And I love going to the Special Olympics, but they had the Respect Week, and Mrs. Lavelle is in charge of that. So I want to thank her. And also Heather Green, and then all the Danielle Silver, Victoria Alban, Brittany Kosher, Crystal Grimes, Thane Albee, Nick Ruiz, Jessica Wiesniewski, and the National Junior Honor Society for their help. And that is it. You're welcome.
Questions from Mrs. Briscoe? Okay, moving on. FOIA requests. We had 4 of them that were fulfilled. Action requests. All right, Kelly, ready? Sorry, Kelly Lynn. We got too many. And they sit right next to each other.
Now that Kelly said she's ready, here
Yes.
we go. I move to approve minutes from the February 19th, 2025 regular meeting and closed session meeting as presented.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion?
So I had emailed a couple modifications. Thank you, Mr. Stein, for forwarding that to the board. There was, I think, probably just 1 out of the 3 is more necessary. There was a point of discussion that was on a action item that wasn't on the minutes. And, you know, our policy says that we should be, and this is not criticism of you, it just wasn't on the minutes and it happened. So I just wanted to ask that that get added. And the action item was, and the discussion was on the 7E MIS roof restoration action item is where there was discussion that was not on the minutes.
Motion's on the board to approve minutes as presented without it. The addendum's not been printed, nor the minutes been made.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. I mean, there is a recording of the meeting, so you can look it up on YouTube if you wanted. But Steve forwarded this to the board for everybody's review, the amended minutes.
There are no amended. Let's be clear. Made a suggestion based upon input. No one else made any suggestion based upon their other contributions. We were presented this to approve it as presented before we received. No one else tried to make any kind of revision comments. So
I think the proper procedure is to move to amend, and then if that fails, then it goes back to the original motion. But I'll defer to Mr. Bush.
So I should say I make a motion to amend the minutes so that the discussion is notated and record is made in accordance with the board policy of our minutes.
Well, so thank you. That
Sorry,
is correct.
my
No,
apologies.
you're fine. I just didn't know if we had any more discussion. So yes, if discussion is done, then yes, that it would be to make an amended motion to include the minutes that you have added to that.
Yeah, and sorry, just, I think, like I said, the most important one is the one that there's no note of discussion that occurred. So it was the MIS roof restoration is that action.
Okay, is there a second? Second, okay. Okay, so now this is where it gets tricky. We have two motions on the floor. So we need to, is there an amendment to, I don't know, here, help me out here. We have two motions, right? So, all right, so we'll vote on the amended motion first. Okay, so we'll vote, thank you. We'll vote on the amended motion first. To have the amended minutes, not the initial minutes.
Got it.
Clear on what we're voting on? Okay, Kelly?
Okay, Mr. Bush,
No.
Mrs. McMillan,
Yes.
Mrs. Ost, Mrs. Tunney, Mrs. Zelinski, Mr. Andreessen, Mrs. Briscoe.
Okay, motion failed. Is there a vote on an original? On Jim? First, second. Any discussion on that initial motion? Okay, please call that vote.
Okay, Mrs. Briscoe, Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan, Mrs. Ost, Mrs. Tunney, Mrs. Zelinski, Mr. Andreessen.
Okay, that motion passed. Next up is district bills. Mrs. Tunney had the honor this month.
Yep. Dr. Shaw had a kind of brief conversation with me. I only had a couple questions that she cleared up for me. So I moved to approve the monthly bills as presented.
Take your pick.
I heard
I
Julie
heard them at the
first.
same time. I heard Jim and Julie. I heard Julie. Julie second. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Okay, Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan,
Yes.
Mrs. Ost, Mrs. Tunney, Mrs. Zelinski, Mr. Andreessen, Mrs. Briscoe.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is personnel. Lengthy items, 4 pages. Is there a second? Second by Jim. Any discussion?
Yes. So I moved to amend, and this is going to get complicated here, because there's a number of things on here. So I guess I moved to amend.
I think you want to say you moved to table, not amend.
No, I want to amend the approval to only have some of them.
Okay, all right. Semantics, but okay. Amend, got it. Okay.
So I would like to separate out items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, from the rest. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. I'm sorry, and 8.
So we're voting on those separately, or we're voting those as one group?
One group.
Right. Voting, separating them out into 2 groups. So 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Is that a motion?
Can I make I think there's some confusion. So if I may, I think what you want, it might be clear if we say that we would like to, or your motion would be to table item number 3, table 9, 10, and 11.
Well, I would like to vote on I would like to amend the motion to vote on items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yes. So if we table the rest.
But I don't want to table. I want to amend the motion on the floor.
She wants to vote for both. She just wants 2 separate votes.
Is that what you want?
Right.
2 separate votes.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I would like to amend the motion on the table so that currently, right now, we vote on items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay. Does everybody understand that we
Yes.
are voting on 1, 2, 3? Well,
No, 1, 2, 4 through 8.
3. Cancel that.
It's almost easier to say, trying to make it as number 3,
That's what I was trying to say.
9, 10, and 11 into a separate cycle.
Correct.
Is that what we're really talking
And the information only, I don't understand that. So that's where I wanted to separate that out too, because I asked it. Well, we're voting on this whole thing, and part of the whole thing is says information only. So I'd submitted a question, it wasn't answered. I don't understand why this is on here, what we're doing. So that's why I kind of wanted to cleave that off as well.
In all fairness, motion stops at 11, which is blue. The part that's in information doesn't have a number next to it. It's not part of this action.
Okay, so I make an amended motion to approve items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. Okay, you got that?
I'm ready.
number?
I got
okay,
it.
alrighty.
Are we voting on whether we want to make this motion?
No,
separate, or
Whether we're splitting them, that's the first vote.
okay.
Yes.
So we're not even approving on.
We're voting whether we're
We
doing
are
it.
We
approving.
got to do the amendment first.
Just so we're clear.
No, I don't think so. I
Well, that's the
amended the
amendment
motion
you just made.
to approve. I amended the motion to approve items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
The rest of the board has to approve.
Have to approve the amendment that you suggested.
Because there's already a motion on the floor for the other way.
Because that was not
We all
the,
have to agree to change the motion now.
Yes,
the original action item was 1 through 11.
correct.
You're amending it to just include 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has to get approved because it's a deviation from what was presented.
It's my understanding that a motion to amend trumps the current motion on the floor. So is that not true?
It is, but now we have to vote whether or not we're going to amend it.
Just like we did with the last one.
For the minutes. Same thing.
Kind of?
Did it for the minutes.
Julie, do you?
So can we, we've moved and seconded the amendment, and just as a professional courtesy, and so these folks get their approval, can we just agree as a professional courtesy to do 1, 2, 4 through 8? And then if there's a discussion separately about 3, 9 through 11, can we have that separately? I'm just making that as a suggestion, but yeah, we have to vote on the amendment first and then the original motion.
Yes.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm literally saying that's the rule.
Yeah.
The original motion was out there. They have an amendment. People have to agree to the amendment.
Correct.
And,
Okay. So I think we're all.
Mrs. Briscoe. Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan,
Yes.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
I'm honestly very straight. I'm being very straight.
It's the vote
Right
now.
now, it's whether or not you want to separate these numbers to vote for just 1, 2, 4 through
Yeah.
8.
Personnel report was presented to 1 through 11. Kelly has proposed to separate out 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now if, well,
But honestly, you had it before today.
Okay, so now I make a motion to approve items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the
Second.
personnel report
second by
as,
Julie, any discussion? Kelly, did you get Jim's vote on the first one, on the amendment? Did you vote?
You voted.
Yes, you did vote yes? Okay,
Yeah.
you got that. Okay, all right, call the vote.
Okay. Mrs. Ost,
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes, and welcome to the crew.
Yes, welcome.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes. Welcome.
Okay, motion passed. So just to clarify things for people following along, who just got hired, welcome to the district, are, hang on. Jimmy Polson, bus driver. We have, hang on a second here, I'm working through the list here. New hires, Dana Labno, special education teacher at MES, Carrie Litto, fifth grade teacher at MIS, and Jennifer Bartles, a kindergarten teacher, MES, and Kiki Panos as the new assistant principal at Mokena Junior High. Okay, on to the next.
so I make a April.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get at in the first when I was. Okay,
Second.
second, any other discussion?
Why? Why are we doing this?
I would like to speak to that. You know, I was put in an uncomfortable position, and all of the motion was all lumped together, and it included contracts. I did not want to go down this road. I asked some questions prior to meeting, which is what we do, and none of my questions were answered. So it puts me in an uncomfortable position to single out anybody that I had questions on. I just won't do it. And it's uncomfortable for me, and it would be uncomfortable for the staff where I had questions. It's just unnecessary. All that needed to happen was my questions be answered. So that is why I'm in favor of postponing until my questions are answered. And I will not single out anybody, and I will keep this as 9 through 11. Thank you.
I would like to give my rationale too. I agree. I'm not comfortable. You know, I had submitted questions just so everybody's clear. You know, our normal procedure, there's a couple things that are diverting from normal procedure. Historically, admin contracts have always been approved in April, sometimes May. So that's, you know, abnormal. Historically, it's a standalone action item and not part of a overall personnel report, meaning administration contracts are standalone on our agenda. So I kind of question that, but I think the biggest issue is that we just received these contracts on Friday. You can see the number of contracts there are. I did submit questions that were not answered. Our our board procedure is that questions submitted by board members are not answered unless all board members, I'm sorry, the majority of the board members, meaning 4 or more board members, agree that they want the question answered. So the questions that I asked pertaining to these contracts did not meet the majority requirement for questions to get answered. And I'm just going to say a couple of those questions. One is the job description. So the job descriptions, we do have a couple, but we don't have many of the job descriptions that are referenced in these contracts. So I would like to just see what those are and understand that. And then and this I didn't bring up until I was reading these contracts over the weekend. I mean, I question there's some inconsistencies. I don't understand why some people get paid vacation and others do not in the contract. Some people get paid life insurance and others do not. So I just would like to understand, some people have a background check requirement and others do not. So I don't really understand the discrepancies between one contract and the other. So I would like to run that to ground. And typically we have a month in between an information item where we receive the information and we're able to look at the contracts and submit the questions before the action. And here again, we didn't get that. We just got these contracts on Friday. So those are the reasons why I would like to table one more month.
I'm hearing it correctly. People ask questions. They didn't feel they got answers. We are delaying this. So let's be honest. This was discussed last month. This is not a surprise. This is an annual formality for our staff. They passed their annual reviews, and this is not a surprise at all. This is a formality, and quite honestly, our people deserve to know that they have a job because they're out here working hard for us. 1 month, quite honestly, is not going to make any impact to financials or anything else, but it will be the same people voting on it, one way or the other. It is. So I don't see the point in waiting. I think we should be good to our people.
Okay, any other discussion?
This is in no way a testament to these people and how I feel about these people. I want to approve the contracts. I want to be comfortable with this. I don't feel like I have had enough time. I did not have the information. The contracts were, the very first time the contracts were sent to us was on Friday afternoon. And historically, this has always been done in April. I am not trying to, well, let me just say, I want to hire all these people. This is not my intention. So I need to be comfortable with the vote, comfortable with the contract. There are some inconsistencies I don't understand, and that's where I'm at. So I'm not trying to make people feel nervous.
Quite honestly, it should have been a closed session discussion. And quite honestly, the contract should not be talked about in this kind of public setting. There are rules and there's protocol, and that is not being followed.
Okay. Discussion. All right. So we had a first and a second to table 3, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Let's call the vote to table those till next month.
Okay. Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Mrs. Ost. Mrs. Tunney.
No.
Mrs. Zielinski.
No.
Mr. Andreessen.
No.
Mrs. Briscoe.
No.
Mr. Bush.
Yes. So 4-3, if I counted right, no, to table it. Okay. All right. So the motion failed. So then we need, is there a motion to approve 3, 9, 10, 11?
I move to approve 3, 9. Hold on. Wait. 3, 9, 10, 11.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion?
I want to go on record that I'm discussing this, and
Sure.
this is not me being opposed to hiring these people, that I'm not comfortable with the contracts, and I've not had my questions answered is the reason that I'm going to vote no.
Okay, any other discussion? How many of the contracts have changed year over year? Do we know?
Yeah, I can talk to that. The language that was changed from last year to this year was in the coordinator contract to clarify the language that we discussed last month on how that major medical piece, that section of the contract was worded for clarity. Because when we discussed it last month, you heard how it was worded prior and it was a little messy. So I rewrote it. I sent that language through the attorney. The attorney gave it its blessing, and it was put into the coordinator contracts. So that language was clarified. We talked about it last month. And then the year was updated from last year to this year. The dollar amounts were updated with the dollar amounts that you were given last month. And the administrators who had been here more than 4 years inside that are 260-day administrators that have vacation that were more than 4 years, instead of saying you get 20 days up until 4 years, then after 4 years you get 25. For those people that have been here long, it just says you get 25 because you've been here more than 4. So those are the changes in the contracts from last year to this year. It was clarifying coordinator to clean up the language for single coverage only, the dollar amounts in the year. Cleaning up that language and the dollar amount in the years. Yeah.
But to be clear, what we
Yep.
talked about last month was changing it for one person, and what you're saying now is new information that you've changed it for multiple people.
To clean up that language that was the same language in other contracts, cleaning up that line item for the people who qualified like that, to clean up that language. And it was messy language in one contract, and we took the clean language and put it in the contracts where that language stood, where that language was impacted in the different contracts.
I guess.
I did use one example from one contract when we talked about it because it was one contract that had that language. Any other contract that had the bad language was removed and the good language was put in.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, Kelly Lynn, please call the vote then.
Okay. Mrs. Tunney. Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe. Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
No.
Mrs. Ost.
Okay, motion is passed. Next on is the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe. Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is donations to the district.
Donations for the district as presented.
Second by Ms. Briscoe. Any discussion?
Just want to thank the PTA and the Music Boosters for their generous donations.
Yes, I'd agree. Thank you for the PTA and the Music Boosters' continued support. It's appreciated. Okay, call the vote.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is on the Illinois Vision 2030.
I move to approve the adoption of the Illinois Vision 2030 resolution as presented.
Second by Ms. Briscoe. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is the bus barn fire alarm panels.
Roof restoration.
Oh, second straight month. Man. All right. MIS roof restoration. I got too far ahead of myself.
I move to approve the contract with Melcor Roofing in an amount not to exceed $416,000 for the roofing restoration project at MIS in summer of 2025.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion?
I just want to show appreciation for a amount to come in under an estimate. So, way to go, Terry.
I had so much to do with it.
I apologize, Mr. McAtee, for
It's
skipping your
awesome.
roof. Got a little aggressive on my crossing off the items here. All right, please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan? Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tony?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Now we can flip the page. Bus barn fire.
Still.
No.
Oh, I can't.
Gotcha.
Bus barn fire alarm panels.
I move to approve the fire alarm panel replacement project for the bus barn at the total cost of $27,300 as presented.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tony?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is administrative procedures online.
I move to approve the subscription currently priced at $1,600 per year to the Illinois School Board Association's online business.
Second.
Second by Julie. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tony?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is the Clear software.
Eric, I got this. I'd like to move to table purchase of Clear residency verification software. For one user at $1,147 a month, based on a 3-year term with 5% increase year over year. I read the exact same thing, but instead of approve, I'm just replacing it with the word.
Second. Ooh, we're like.
All right, Julie. Julie, second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Can we discuss your reasoning for doing this?
Yeah, it's very unpopular, and quite honestly, it's a lot of money, and it's a solution to search a problem, quite honestly, we don't have. And we have done residency verifications in our community for a long time, and quite honestly, we haven't found anybody. I'm being very honest with that. We got parents that are jumping through hoops, bringing in paperwork, doing everything they need to do to help support for children coming to our doors. And quite honestly, I want to be very good with their money. And the idea of spending this kind of money over a 3-year period does not interest me. We already have residency verification. We already have, as Steve said earlier, people showing driver's license, property taxes, utility bills, etc. If they can fake all that, who knows? Who knows? But that is what I'm telling you guys. And I'm trying to be good with money, but quite honestly, we're still taking care of kids. So there you go.
I appreciate that, Jim. I completely agree with you. I'm just curious why you would table it instead of just voting no. It sounds like you're not in favor of it.
I already got an email that a lot of the other board hated it, so I just decided to table it. Exactly what I did. If you want to vote it down, be my guest, I'll do that too. But I told people I would table it. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. McMillan?
The motion is to table.
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tony?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes. Okay, motion passed. Next up is the MES bidirectional amplifier.
Move to approve the purchase of the bidirectional amplifier public safety radio enhancement system for MES at a total cost of $76,182 as presented.
Second by Lisa. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tony?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up, assistant principal job description.
I move to approve assistant for job description.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's call the vote.
Mrs. Ost,
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Director of Human Resource job description.
I move to approve the director of human resources job description.
Second.
Second by Julie.
Sure.
Any did you say? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. I just heard. Yeah. And then you made me second guess myself when the response. Okay. All right. Please call the vote.
Mrs. Tunney,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski, Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan,
Yes.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed. Next is the creation of 3 maintenance positions and the job descriptions for those.
I move to postpone the creation of 3 maintenance staff positions and the maintenance staff job descriptions as presented until April.
Okay. Second that motion. Any discussion on that?
I would like to give rationale if people would like
Please
to
do.
hear it. So we started talking about this fairly recently. I understand that the committee is working hard to develop options. I know that maintenance and custodial services are typically separated, and I can appreciate that, and I understand where we're going. What troubles me is we're in the middle of negotiating the MCSA contract, and these positions would fall under these contracts. So I don't particularly care for the timing of this. The overall cost is troubling to me as well. We are providing a competitive salary, but the package also includes full district paid benefits, including health, vision, dental, and a contribution to IMRF. Total package for each position is about an average of $90,000 a person. I understand these positions are very valuable, but until we get a proper cost analysis that includes potentially a shared cost option of insurance, I'm just not in a position to vote in favor of this at this time. Thank you.
Discussion.
You have something?
I do, but go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I guess my question to, I'm not sure who this would be to, maybe all 3, Stein, Mr. Rana, and Dr. Shaw, is that what is the ramifications if this gets delayed till April for a vote or later, from a hiring standpoint? I'm just thinking logistically, if these people are supposed to start July 1st, I'm going backwards, right? If we postpone it till April, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, then we have to leave it posted for a certain period of time. Then we got to do interviews. You're looking at probably not really hiring somebody until May, June? June would be the
Approval in April, posting, interviewing. I don't know if we'd make it by May because that's 4 weeks. It's tight. Posting, interviewing, second interview if you need it. 4 weeks is tight because it's not 4 weeks. We also need to give it to you the Friday before, so it's like 3.5 weeks. So it's tight for a June hire for a July start. So it would end up being a June hire. Potentially, yeah. That's working backwards.
Mr. Bush,
Anything, Dave?
we're not
Yeah,
hiring
yeah,
anybody
okay.
right now. This is the very first step. No one's being hired at this moment. This is it's essentially exploring to see if we can find people that would fill these options, and then we got to get them in, and we got to get them trained up. And the tighter of a time frame we make this, I think it'll be harder for us to carry forward the way we should be. We're not hiring anybody tonight. We are creating a position to post.
go ahead.
I'm confused, and I'm just gonna run through my points of confusion, and you guys can respond if you're prepared. I thought we were hiring the same people that we already have. So I guess I'm questioning why we're having to go out and post and all this stuff when I thought these are our current 3 people that are already working for Alpha, and we know who they are, and they've been with the district for a while in those positions. Is my first question. My second question is, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. We came to an agreement last month that there was going to be a superintendent committee, and I know that has happened, and I know you guys are working on it, but it was my understanding that you guys would come, that committee would come with a recommendation to the board. And Steve has said that that's going to happen next month. So I just don't understand why this is coming before that recommendation. To me, we've not even established that this is going to happen. There's some cost questions I have. And then the third thing is, which I laid out earlier with the questions and the scope of work. And then the third thing is, it was my understanding that part of the purpose of establishing these partially cover some bus driver needs that were not being met, or we were having a hard time. So we've just heard earlier today that we hired a full-time substitute. So that means we have 10 routes. We now have 11 full-time drivers that we are have on our payroll. So I guess I question, does this need really still exist if we have now that 11th driver? And then the other thing is related to that is, and this is part of where I feel like we need that another month is, it was my understanding that these people it's going to be a requirement, and as stated in the job description, that they have a CDL and they are able to drive the bus, but then I saw an email that one of the 3 current people potentially wouldn't have that be able to.
I think there's a lot to unpack here, Mrs. McMillan. And I think it's also presumptuous to say that we would, just as a blanket statement, that the 3 maintenance people are just going to be hired. I think that's presumptuous to say. And I think that if we do hire some of the current maintenance staff, I think we may not be able to have all of them obtain a CDL. I think it would be wise for us to get as many maintenance people as possible to obtain a CDL, because even if we have 11 full-time drivers, we always have a need for substitute bus drivers. And we might have, we have all kinds of athletic runs, and Mr. Munch can attest to this, that we are always scrambling for drivers, particularly in the fall, when we have baseball, softball going in all kinds of different directions. So I think that's a big element of what we're talking about when we talk about a better work product as well. Terry, anything else to add? Dave, anything else to add?
I would just like to say that transportation specifically excluded from the MCSA contract in the preamble. And maintenance. I'm sorry. Maintenance. Maintenance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's 10:04. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just to that. We are
Okay.
mirroring the benefits from that contract.
I
as
did
a
ask the
non-certified.
question,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was misinformation. So I appreciate you making that correction.
Anyway, we did mirror the benefits. They're just specifically excluded in the preamble.
It's all right.
Oh, okay.
I must have misunderstood. I thought, clearly I did. I thought we were hiring, I thought we were seeking to hire the people we already have.
No, the motion is to create the position, not to hire the people.
There is a motion on the floor.
To postpone until April.
It'll be fine. We're almost done.
Was there any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, let's call the vote.
Okay.
This is to, just to be clear, this is to table / postpone the vote till April.
Mrs. Zelinski.
No.
Mr. Andreessen.
No.
Mrs. Briscoe.
No.
Mr. Bush.
No.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
No.
Okay, that motion failed.
Okay, that being said, I would like to move to approve the creation of 3 maintenance staff positions, also approve the maintenance staff job description as presented.
Second one is Tunney. Any discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
No.
Mrs. Ost.
No.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Last but not least, the MOU for gifted learner endorsement.
Move to approve memorandum of agreement as regards to gifted education endorsements in the collective bargaining agreement between the association and Board of Education.
That's it.
Ooh.
All
Go
right,
Anna.
I guess we'll go with Anna. Okay, please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Okay, items for the April 16th meeting. There's gonna be a whole bunch. Dr. Shaw has always got some.
I will have the memo for the student fees and including student lunch fees. The information tonight that you received in paper on the MES roof restoration, there could be a action item for the addendum to the contract with Melcor if we come back with favorable numbers to do a little bit of the MES roof restoration. And I'll ask for approval for the Will County Intergovernmental Agreement for the Transportation Consortium and the 2 MOUs for the shared neighbor ingress egress.
I know when we were going back and forth between the fees, purchase, repairs, we look at the total cost of repairs over the last few years. I figure we just had the invoices for criminal page.
I can see if we have any invoices, but a lot of those costs were assumed by the music boosters in the past.
I'm sure they would have that documentation, so.
Maybe they can help us.
Yeah, absolutely. They provided that to Dr. Cohen previously. Absolutely. I can help work with you on that because I'm part of Boosters. You got it.
I know somebody.
I'll have an action item. And then,
All right, Lincoln.
And hopefully I'll have an information item on Chromebook purchases as well.
All right.
Okay.
I would like to include
For the K-5 social studies program, as well as the 6 through 8 tier 1 SEL program.
Okay. All right, I'm sure other things will come up too.
Yeah.
It's 10:10, so people are tired. Okay, next steps follow-up. Okay, not hearing any for the good of Mokena.
I have a couple. It was my, I tried really hard. I wanted to top Miss Blank from last month with her 3 scholarships. Boosters, Music Boosters has 6 pending scholarships. So be on the lookout. They are going to post the information about that shortly. 3 for 8th graders and 3 for former students that are in high school right now. Another shout out for community cleanup on April 12th, if anyone wants to join Team Ost on that. And thank you to the library resource folks for the book fair effort. I really appreciate it.
Anything else for the good of Mokena? Mr. Roland?
Yeah, 2 things. Volley for the Cure is April 8th at junior high. So please, that's right. Yeah, April 8th. Please make sure you are attending or participating in that. And then information just went out last week about the PTA color run at the end of the year. It's the 29th of May. It's going to be another big event. It was fun last time. Eric got a lot of color on him as he ran. It was a very sweaty day. It was very, very hot. So I recommend, you don't have to run. You can walk. You can throw color. You can participate and go to the very long truck lines or the food truck lines. It's a great event. And I sent out stuff in my newsletter. I don't know. I'm sure you guys did too. It's a great event, and I just wanted to plug that.
Mokena Lions will be delivering food baskets to approximately 30 families in our community for Easter. And Mokena Miracles is doing a March Madness fundraiser right now. So that's nice because they help our community quite a bit.
I just want to do a quick one. I know it's late, but I just want to celebrate the Lincoln Way hockey team. Yes, my son was part of that team, but they won their first championship cup in their division. A majority of the kids in this Lincoln Way club are honor roll, high honor roll students. My son did make all-state, the all-star team, and the club, the team also made it to the second to the last game before the championship game and lost in a shootout overtime. But you know, I just wanted to celebrate our Lincoln Way Hockey Club.
Awesome. Filled with former Rangers.
Yep.
So the Village of Mokena, if you look at their website, they're hosting a Mokena Police Station. Please join us at the Mokena Police Station for the Comprehensive Plans First Community Workshop. So that's on April 22nd at the new police station. If you have not seen it, from I just saw it here, 5:30 to 7:30. It says bring your family and neighbors, and they'll be learning and sharing. So
what's it for?
It's the Comprehensive Plans Community Workshop. So it says share your ideas and help shape the vision of the village for the next 10 to 20 years. So this is opportunity we have. So invite everybody to that.
I'd like to thank Mr. Gurney for showing up today and coming out and visiting our staff and stuff like that. And the green tie looks great. Hopefully get some more green ties on that front. Okay. I move that the Board of Education adjourn to closed session for purposes of collective bargaining and personnel. Second by Lisa. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost? Mrs. Tunney? Mrs. Zielinski? Mr. Andreessen?
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
There, 10 minutes.
10 minutes.